I call to order the Lakewood City Council meeting of Monday, April 20th, 2026. Ms. Schumacher, could you please call the roll?
Councilmember Brandstetter,
Here.
Councilmember Lauricella,
Here.
Councilmember Lindholm,
Present.
Councilmember Pearson,
Present.
Councilmember Talbot,
Present.
Deputy Mayor Bell,
Here.
and Mayor Boki.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Next is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. There are no proclamations and presentations today, so we will immediately go to public comments. So public comments are accepted by mail, email, or by live, virtual, or in-person comment. Send comments in advance by mail or email to Brianna Schumacher, City Clerk at 6000 Main Street Southwest, Lakewood, Washington 98499, or B. Schumacher at cityoflakewood.us. Comments received up to 1 hour before the meeting have been provided to the City Council electronically. The clerk will read the names of those who have submitted comments in advance. Ms. Schumacher, do we have any comments in advance?
Mayor, you received written comments in advance of the meeting from Wally Rourke.
Thank you very much. There is a public hearing tonight on the fiscal year 2026 Community Development Block Grant, or also known as CDBG Annual Action Plan for CDBG and home programs. If you would like to speak specifically to this topic, please do not do so under the public hearing portion of this agenda, so we can get it into the record, specifically comments on the CDBG plan. The members of the audience may comment on items relating to any matter related to city business under the public comments section. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. Virtual comments, if you would like to provide live virtual public comments, you will need to join the Zoom meeting as an attendee by calling on the telephone 253-215-8782 and enter meeting ID 868-7263-2373, or visit zoom.us and enter meeting ID 868-7263-2373. Upon entering the meeting, please enter your name and use the raise hand feature to be called upon. For those participating by calling in by telephone, to use the raise hand feature, press *9 on your phone. When you're unmuted, please provide your name and city of residence. Each speaker will be allowed 3 minutes to speak. Outside of public comments, all attendees on Zoom will continue to have the ability to virtually raise your hand for the duration of the meeting. You will not be acknowledged and your microphone will remain muted except for when you are called upon. So we tonight are going to go on Zoom or phone first. So Ms. Schumacher, do we have anybody who has raised their hand virtually? Looks like we got 2.
Mayor, first we have Judith Anderson.
Great. Thank you very much. Ms. Anderson, welcome. You have 3 minutes. Ms. Anderson?
I think the wrong person got unmuted.
Oh,
Okay, we'll go with Tishamir Dunlop.
okay,
I apologize.
Mr. Dunlop, would you like to go first?
All right, sure. Hello, my name is Tihomir Dunlop. I'm a resident of Lakewood. I am making a comment tonight to urge the city to actively promote a Lights Out initiative during peak bird migration and to take meaningful steps to reduce unnecessary nighttime lighting in our community. I've been watching birds in my neighborhood and on Ponce de Leon Creek since I was small. Wildlife researchers are documenting a major surge in spring migration across Washington. Excuse me. According to data from Birdcast and Purdue University Aeroecology Lab, Hundreds of thousands and soon millions of birds are passing overhead each night. Artificial light is a well-established threat during this period. It disorients migrating birds, increasing exhaustion and the likelihood of fatal collisions with buildings and other structures. Public participation is essential, though. Residents are encouraged to turn off or dim non-essential outdoor lighting between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. during peak migration. National Audubon Society recommends maintaining lights out practices from now through to the end of May to cover the full migration window. However, awareness in Lakewood appears to be very low. We have turned off our own lights, and yet nearly all surrounding properties continue to keep theirs on. To date, I have not seen any outreach, guidance, or acknowledgement of this issue from the city. I ask that the city use its website and social media to inform residents about migration and the importance of a lights out policy, to provide clear, simple instructions on when and how to reduce lighting, lead by example by dimming or turning off non-essential municipal lighting during peak migration. If nothing else, we specifically request that the new streetlights on Waverly and in front of our home be turned off during overnight hours through this migration period. These lights contribute to the unnecessary illumination at a time when reducing light pollution can have a real and immediate impact. This is a straightforward, low-cost action, and in fact it saves money since you don't have to use electricity, that builds environmental stewardship and community values. Other jurisdictions are already taking steps to protect migratory birds in this way. Why should Lakewood be left behind? Thank you for stepping up to help the birds who are already in such trouble worldwide. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dunlap. Judith Anderson. Ms. Anderson.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Oh, great. Okay, hi. I'm Judith Anderson. I live in Tacoma, and I'm asking you to take a stand for the future and not allow the Gary Oaks to be cut down for a parking lot. I read the Tribune story a while ago and noted that there's a landowner involved. And I was at an event that was also attended by the county assessor. And the event was about the county charter, and there's going to possibly be changes. And I piped up because I was thinking that if a landowner having land that has precious trees on it and a wetlands, maybe they could have reduced or eliminated property taxes as long as they keep the trees and the land to be beneficial for the inhabitants, you know, the non-human inhabitants, as well as for the humans. And frankly, right now we're facing a very hostile regime to things that are alive. There are plans to really cut down a lot of the trees in the Olympic Peninsula and in Oregon. And it's because it's, you know, public land and the government thinks they can do anything they want with it. And I'm just stressing that the climate change issue is real and it is getting worse way faster than any of the predictions were made about it. And if we keep the trees, they will absorb the carbon dioxide. If we get rid of them, it becomes hell, I don't know what the word is. I can't think of the word. Anyway, it gets worse. And I'm begging you to look out for your grandchildren, because they are going to have to take care of everything that is going to go wrong. And if at least when it's 150 degrees outside, there's a tree to sit under, they'll thank you. So I'm done.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Is there anybody else virtually who would like to speak?
Mayor, there are no other virtual hands raised at this time.
Thank you very much. Then we'll go into chambers. And the first speaker on the list is Mr. Joel Vrana.
Hi, my name is Joel Verana. I'm the president of the Eagle Point Homeowners Association on American Lake. Thank you for having me here again, or allowing me to be here again today. You've got some packets in front of you, I believe, and that will show petitions that have been signed from a growing number of shoreline residents that have become concerned with the water quality of American Lake as years have gone by. I have to let you know that I'm very appreciative that this chamber, along with the city, has worked together with other government agencies to improve our water level, and that has helped a lot. And you've also worked a great deal with the milfoil, which has helped a lot. But the bigger elephant in the room is really the amount of nitrogen and phosphates in American Lake that's contributing excessively to noxious and nuisance weeds, as well as bacteria growth and algae growth. So the top left picture on this, if you have these in front of you, is what the weir looks like. And for many years now, it's been way below because they let the water out in the winter when they should be saving it. And we've got that corrected thanks to you. I appreciate it. But what I really want to show you is if you look at number 3, you'll find that American Lake is kind of the universal recipient of poo from Frederickson to Parkland and Spanaway and through, as the watershed that feeds American Lake comes from those areas. So you see the black on that is really septic systems. And then you'll see the red circle is American Lake, and you see where the water flow goes to American Lake, and then it goes out to the sound from there. As a result, we end up in American Lake with enough lawn fertilizer that it's crazy. It's not actually lawn fertilizer, it's septic stuff. But you know, the nitrogen level is so high that we can't control the shoreline weeds and all the other things that go along with that. So as a result, every year we're adding more and more to this. It's becoming a bigger and bigger problem. So these people that have signed this petition are willing and able to put money together to try and solve this problem at no cost to the city. I want to emphasize this, at no cost to the city. We will manage it if you will let us, but we need a permit that you have, and only one per lake can be taken. And you have the permit that we have to work under. But we need your permission to do this. And I know your departments are very, very busy, but we're asking for you to put some pressure on accelerating this process, because the algae is really in full bloom right now. And at the pace that we're dragging it, we're going to miss it again with the opportunity to get these weeds and algae under control. So we need your help on this. We really, really do. The Department of Ecology says that when phosphorus levels get to 20 parts per billion, that an action must be taken. We end up routinely at, now I'd like to continue on as Joel Verana,
Okay.
concerned citizen. We get about 40 parts per billion as the lake flips over every year, and we don't do anything about it, except that the county puts out these cyanobacteria or noxious bacteria problem signs that says swimming is closed for now. That's our solution currently. That's not really a great solution. The bigger problem is the lake. So if you look on the lower right, and you see some of those pictures there, these are early spring pictures of American Lake. This is what the end of my dock looks like. The upper right actually is the end of my dock every year. 9 or 10 years ago, I took my swimming ladder out because there's nobody who would ever swim in that. I have not put it back yet because it's not improved in the last 10 years. It's worsening. And so we have a lot of people that are more than ready to do something about this. If you go to the next picture, 7 and 8, 7 is me taking the muck from the algae, the green filamentous algae, off my shoreline that's probably 8 or 10 inches thick. And it smells exactly like a dairy barn. You don't want to be near it. When the wind comes off the lake onto my deck at my house, you don't want to be near that. This isn't helping my property values, believe me. Eventually, it's going to hurt your tax values. It's just full of everything, stringy weeds, everything. So we have kind of a long-term and a short-term plan. The short-term plan is let's work with these shoreline weeds now, and we can do that with your help and your permission. We'll pay for it. And then while we're doing that, we'll study what the phosphorus levels are in the lake and see how we can control them better. There are very good ways to control it. We will put up the money again. We've got the people interested. We have people trying to give us money now because they want to do it now, but we can't do it without your help. We need your permission. And you just have to let us manage ourselves a little bit. We'll do it if you'll just let us. And so this is kind of a timely thing for us. We're 3 or 4 weeks into the algae bloom already. My shoreline is going to look like this picture from June 9th in about another 2 weeks because it's warmer this year than it was last year early on. I'll lose another summer. I'm tired of losing summers. Give us our lake back if you could. Just allow us to do this. And we asked for it last week or about 2 weeks ago. We didn't see much action happen from your departments. And, you know, I don't want to be here every 2 weeks and you don't want to see me every 2 weeks. But believe me, we're going to keep working this until we can spruce our lake back up. This American Lake is a jewel of Pierce County, and we're letting it become very tarnished. We are willing to polish that jewel if you'll just let us. So I'll tell you, it's a safety issue. It's a health issue. It's so many issues, and let's just get it under control. And I hope I can get your help. If you have any questions, give me a call or ask me now, whatever you have. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Mr. Rick Wilkerson. Thank you, Mr. Wilkerson. You got 3 minutes.
You bet. I've got 10 quick questions to take up my 3 minutes. And this is in regards to proposed park to be constructed on Gravely Lake. What are the past and present crime statistics for the Lakewood City parks that are currently in use? How happy, number 2, how happy are the residents living in close proximity to these parks? Please provide complaint data compiled over the last few years. What measures will the council take to guarantee that the same crime levels are not realized on Gravely Lake? How will early and late park access issues be prevented? How will the city prevent visitors from leaving park property, the small park property that's proposed, and the lake to cross property lines, go on other people's property? Is the lake to be littered with no trespassing signs? How will noise issues be prevented? Drive by the American and Stillicum Lake parks anytime during the summer months, and you will hear the boom boxes and bass beats from the music lovers with no sense of reason or civility. Is this what you have planned for us now as well? How will campfires, fireworks, and weapons use be effectively prevented or mitigated on these properties? How will the public health issues, including toilets, feces, drug paraphernalia, and trash be handled? Will water testing be completed at regular intervals to determine if the park is causing point source pollution, BOD, nitrogen, bacteria, to the lake? How will the city prevent motor boats and watercraft from being launched on the lake? State rules are strictly enforced by homeowners on Gravely, and this will not be possible with visiting swimmers, canoes, kayaks, floats, and inner tubes across an already crowded lake. Approving an increase in the use density on this small body of water. This is not American Lake. This is not Stillicum Lake. This is an accidental death waiting to happen. How will the city prevent unlawful overnight camping or homeless camps from using and overtaking the property? Will the city work with the Pierce County Assessor to reduce our property taxes once our home values are affected and quality of life will be unquestionably be adversely affected by this development? Homeowners currently pay to stock the lake with fish. How will the city prevent the general public from catching the fish we pay for? Who will enforce fishing bans, licenses? What are your plans for paying for a larger share of the periodic lake chemical treatments that the Gravely Lake homeowners currently pay for right now? Those are the questions I have. Those are the same questions I sent to every council member last year when you're looking at buying another parcel. I heard back from no one, not one response, so.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wilkerson. Ms. Barb Tucci.
Hello, I'm Barb Tucci. I have been Gravelly Lake Improvement Club Secretary of 503 nonprofit corporation established to preserve and maintain the quality of Gravelly Lake's water for 15 years. There are 87 households on Gravelly Lake. I am here to speak specifically to comments made in the Lakewood City Council Saturday 18th, or excuse me, April 18th retreat about access for emergency services on Gravelly Lake. Although the video quality is challenging, I believe Deputy Mayor Bell, mentioned her concerns about emergency services accessing Gravelly Lake. I might be wrong, sorry, but it was hard to see. I want to reassure the council that the Fire and Police Department has access to one of 5 private boat launches available virtually on demand. All gate codes are available to emergency services, as annual testing proves each year. I have contact information for literally every adult on the lake, 87 households. I understand that some members of this council are determined to provide public access to Gravelly Lake without a reasonable or feasible plan to mitigate public safety and environmental concerns. Ambitious goals for city leaders who just increased the sales tax are operating at a deficit and are having to pay to comply with the public defender mandate. Yet the council is still willing to spend time and resources to pursue a $2 million purchase? Question mark? Really? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tucci.
Ms. Tucci, just for clarification, that was not me on the video that said that. So, there's just.
Mr. Curtis Clemens.
Hi, good evening. Well, I'm definitely not the spokesman for the group, okay? But I do live on Gravelly Lake, and I have a little different perspective here. I've spent most of my life in the Federal Way area, went through all kindergarten through 12th grade. If you're not really familiar with Federal Way, I'm sure you all know where it is, of course, but if you're not really familiar, you probably wouldn't know that there's actually quite a few lakes in Federal Way. Probably the biggest couple would be Steel Lake and 5 Mile Lake, but there's actually quite a few of them. But the entire city has a no motors policy on any lakes because they're all, the biggest ones are probably close to the size of Gravelly Lake. And there would be deaths all the time there if they did that. If this proposal was about American Lake, you know, not because I don't live there, but I would have no problem with it. American Lake is roughly about 9 or 10 times, I believe, the size of Gravelly Lake. There are deaths that happen on American Lake. There are deaths that happen on Lake Steilacoom. There, that I know of, in recent memory anyway, there's been no deaths or tragic accidents on Gravelly Lake. 2 reasons why. One reason is that we don't have people from outside the lake there. It's basically a postage stamp sized lake. The other reason, the previous speaker, Barb, I don't know her really well, but I know her well enough. And there's another guy on the lake, and they take, as she said, she knows everybody on the lake and who they are. If somebody's parents go out for the weekend or something and their kids, their high school kids get on the boat, they're right on them on what to do, what not to do. But they're not going to have that authority if people from literally anywhere in the world want to come launch their boat there. They can't yell at them or go out there. They have no authority to do that. And it takes forever to get, you know, somebody there if there's a real problem. Anyway, but it just, mainly I'm here to tell you that it's not a bunch of rich people and we don't want people on our lake. It's not that. I don't consider myself a rich person. This is the way I dress. I work 6 or 7 days a week. I don't feel that I'm rich. Maybe I don't know, but I don't feel if I was rich, I'd be on the beach somewhere instead of doing what I do. But you guys are going to make your decision based on whatever you make your decision on. But you are going to be responsible for some deaths. If you put motorized, you know, if you say, okay, no, therefore nobody can have motors, well, that's going to really hurt us bad because one of the reasons we bought the properties is to be able to get out on the lake if we want to. But it's just not big enough. It's not American Lake. It's not Lake Tapps. It's just not big enough to have these kind of things and have people. I don't personally drink, but let's be honest, drinking and boating shouldn't go together, but it seems like it does. And on such a small lake, I know my time is up. Such a small lake. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Clemens. Okay, that's everybody who signed up. So if there's anybody else who would like their 3 minutes to speak on any matter related to city business, just walk up there and you can actually queue up if you'd like. And
How do I
go
queue
ahead.
up?
You've got your 3 minutes. Please introduce yourself and your place of residence and
Oh,
head.
do I hit a button to start here? Or do you hit it?
We'll start it. It's
All right,
started
perfect.
now.
I'm David Clark. I've been on the lake for about 20 years. One of the crazy things about giving people access to Gravelly Lake, it's a very unusual lake. Our houses are all incredibly high bank. We can't see what's going on the beach. So there was a guy who somehow got on the lake a couple years ago, lit the beach on fire, caught a Gary Oak on fire, and almost burned the place down. For us to be able to get, it's like kind of like, what if we let all these people into your backyard? Because your backyard is not as secure as your front yard. And so it's, it's that thought that we're going to have people roaming the lake with no ability to visualize them unless we install a bunch of CCTV cameras and alarms, which we're probably going to have to do. These alarms will be going off all the time to maintain the security. Because I think the only reason we haven't had more thefts and more vandalism there is because almost everybody on the lake has a gate. But if you give them access to our backyard, we can't see what's going on. We've already seen what happened. I think the other thing I'm concerned about is, I think one of the city council members lives very close to Gravelly Lake, and he would have increased enjoyment from his property. His property values would go up because it would be a 4-minute walk to the lake, while our properties go down. It seems just a little bit like Port Barrel politics. So that's about all I've got to say. I hope that we can find a reasonable way to move forward. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Anyone else who would like to speak? Please come on up. Mr. Dunlop, welcome.
Hello, my name is James Dunlop and I am a Lakewood resident. So the city has just increased its sales tax. So now Lakewood apparently has the second highest sales tax in Pierce County. I think it's at 10.3%, although I understand that the increase that was made is in itself is pretty small. So to be specific about that, Lakewood City Council, as representatives of the people of Lakewood, voted 4-3 in favor of the tax rise. I don't know whether that was a good move to raise the tax. I understand that there are budgetary issues and that there are things increasing the budgetary strain which are beyond the city's control. Yet I do feel that there was something wrong here. And, as I've mentioned on several occasions, the City Council does have a major distortion within it. And that distortion is simply the fact that out of the 7 council members, 4 of the 7, including the mayor and the deputy mayor, are municipal employees. And so you might think that that is a good thing. I mean, if you're involved in local government and city government, you need to know how city councils work. So you would have thought as a municipal employee, you would be just the person to be running the city council. But that's not necessarily the case, because I think that there is a bureaucratic bias there. And as city employees, those 4 city councillors may be used to deferring. They may be used to serving the needs of a bureaucracy. And of course, something like revenue really does matter. Revenue is it's not just about one's own city council, but it's about everywhere. And, having more revenue, it's good for everyone if you're working for the city. Now, as far as this vote is concerned, was quite incredible that 4 of those 4 city councillors who were direct employees of the city council, who were direct employees of municipalities, all 4 of them voted in favor of the tax rise. the 3 who were not direct employees voted against. So from a statistical point of view, the chances of that happening, I believe, are 0.84%. So that's a 1 in 19 chance. So it strikes me that you have here a systematic bias. And I think really, from a moral perspective, that really those 4 city councillors should have recused themselves or at least abstained.
Thank you, Mr. Dunlop. Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
Hi, Mayor Bucky.
Hello.
Hi, Deputy Mayor Bell.
Eddie?
Christina Minetti Lakewood, and I'm here tonight just to mention something as simple as a name. It's about what we choose to recognize and what we choose to ignore, and it reveals a lot about our priorities as a city. Across the country and around the world, actually, communities are celebrating Earth Day. It's a moment to reflect. It's Wednesday, if you don't know. It's a moment to reflect on our shared responsibility to the planet, of course, to educate children, to confront environmental challenges honestly. But here in Lakewood, we substitute that with Parks Appreciation Day. That choice may seem harmless or even positive, but it sends a kind of message that we prefer controlled city-scripted narratives over broader civic engagement with real and sometimes uncomfortable issues. This isn't an isolated pattern, though. We've seen the city stay out of things when they really mattered, failing to fight for the library, arguably our most important and oldest civic institution, which could have been restored as a source of pride. We saw livelihoods disappear when the flea market was shut down and replaced by a warehouse that has sat largely empty. Decisions were made, but the human and cultural costs seemed to go completely ignored. And in our parks, appreciation too often means degradation. Paving, for paths, cutting down trees. And at Wahop, a large parking area near the lake was paved over despite widespread understanding that increasing impervious surfaces worsens runoff and environmental harm. That wasn't necessity, it was preference. Someone wanted to pave, so it was paved. This is what improvement has come to mean in the Lakewood way. Meanwhile, our schools didn't meaningfully observe Earth Day when my child attended them. That's a missed opportunity. It's not just symbolic, but it's educational. Earth Day could be a chance to teach about stewardship, science, and civic responsibility, but instead we organize volunteer cleanups, asking residents to pick up after the consequences of neglect rather than addressing root causes or fostering some kind of deeper respect. If protecting our only planet is considered too political, then we've lost touch with scientific reality. Environmental responsibility isn't partisan at all, it's fundamental. So Lakewood doesn't need to avoid Earth Day. I hope this is the last year that we do not have Earth Day here. It needs to champion it. We have to be honest. You have to be courageous and stand up for something larger than some PR chance. For the city, the people of Lakewood and our own nature deserve this. And Christina Minetti, Gary Oak Coalition Lakewood, we'd like to draw your attention to a problem in Lakewood that is only getting worse. Excess paving and its impact on our most iconic native trees, the Gary Oaks. We appreciate that the city has adopted code prohibiting pavement within the drip line of Gary Oaks. That's good, obviously, but that does not go far enough. Arboricultural science shows that tree roots extend well beyond the drip line, often 2 or 3 times the canopy radius. So for a mature Gary Oak, the roots can spread 50 to 100 feet from the trunk. Protecting only the drip line leaves much of the root system vulnerable to compaction, suffocation, and heat stress. I know there are roots all over the place. We can't protect them all, but it has to not just be the drip line. What's also really concerning, though, is that there is a lack of enforcement about the law that we do have. On Alpharetta, a property owner asphalted over critical root zones and right up to the trunks of 3 large Gary Oaks. The city has known about this violation since August 12, 2025, yet the pavement remains. I just saw it on the way here. As the summer approaches, those roots are still trapped beneath the heat-absorbing asphalt. They've already been deprived of natural water infiltration during the rainy season. I asked the city to do something about it, before it gets too late, too far through the rainy season. And the coming heat will further weaken those protected trees. We're asking the city to expedite whatever process is necessary to require that that pavement be removed and replaced with a permeable surface. Paving is a widespread problem, and most of it was, of course, done long ago. The city may say that because it was done before the current codes or under prior Pierce County jurisdiction, nothing can be done. But a protected species is being harmed every day, which means that now it's time for you to correct the errors of the past. Other cities are taking action. Portland's DPAVE program has become a model, inspiring efforts in our own region by DPAVE Puget Sound, as well as in cities like Chicago, Louisville, and dozens across Canada and Europe. Across Lakewood, Gary Oaks are encased in asphalt and concrete. They survived past decades under a wetter climate. This is no longer the case. Today's hotter, drier conditions make restoring permeability critical. We urge the city to incentivize depaving, remove unnecessary impervious surfaces on public land, and educate residents about alternatives like gravel through its magazine, social media, and website. Impervious surfaces also increase polluted runoff, 6-ppd quinone, which is incredibly toxic to salmon. We're a city full of former and potential salmon habitat. You are in charge. You have the authority to shape policy and public behavior to educate the public. Please use it. Act now while these trees can still be saved. Thanks a lot.
Welcome. Please state your name and
Hello.
residence.
Yes, this is Haley Ivy. I am a Lakewood resident. I live very close to Edgewater Park, and I just have some bullet points. I'll try to keep concise, but I do want to sound off and multiply the concern for our lakes. I just want to bring up the hearing for the Edgewater Park Master Plan, which was the last time I was here. Just in brief, I felt as if our concerns weren't heard at that hearing. There were only 3 of us at that hearing, and I don't believe for a second it's that people don't care. It's that they don't know. And at that hearing, the questions that were asked by City Council to the city planners were not answered. It was very convoluted, which was strange for a last hearing. There was no mention on time for the public comments. And I am trying to keep things more concise, but I was cut off without any warning of there being a timer. There was no timer on the screen. I left that hearing feeling defeated, because as a person that goes to Edgewater Park, which is Steilacoom Lake, I am constantly confronted with the piling up of garbage. It's all on the water line. There's garbage, new trash there every single day, which is a concern too in Sealy Lake, which is, on the front sign considered to be very important. That is also completely taken over by invasive species such as ivy covering the entire trees. This is all over Lakewood. It's not just our parks, it's not just our lakes. It's what Lakewood seems to be turning into is just pavement, invasive species, and no more trees. I would like to say, as a walking commuter, it is incredibly hot even on a 75-degree day, because I'm surrounded by concrete on the way to the bus stop, which is usually covered in garbage. So I would like for the city council to address the not behavior at the last hearing for the Edgewater Master Plan, but I would consider inviting the residents to be heard by the city council. I would like to thank Mark Hare and a few people on that council that were wrapped with attention and listened to my concerns, but I did not appreciate how that ended. It is Lakewood, and we are losing the quality of all of our lakes and all of our woods. And when I joke to my friends from Tacoma or Olympia or Seattle, I say paved wood, and they laugh and agree with me. And I love it here and want to protect this place that I live. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ivy. Any other speakers? Welcome.
Thank you.
Please state your name.
For the record, Brett Jacobson, 12601 Gravelly Lake Drive, Southwest. First, I'd like to thank the council for their time, their energy to be here. And with that, my neighbors for being here to support our community. The one thing that I'd like to just quickly talk about is in looking at the council retreat minutes or video, it was pretty surprising to see that a study's been initiated for the property at the bottom of Hilltop Lane. I think all the council members should take a trip over before you start studying this thing because it makes zero sense. Number one, grade, road width, it's a fire lane. You've paved and sidewalked Nyanza. So the nearest parking outside of that small little driveway is on the other side of Nyanza. So I would suggest everyone take a look before you spend a bunch of money studying this thing. Secondly, I think the council needs to understand some of the nuances of Gravelly Lake. A lot of the property lines go out, extend into the water, so it's not something you can walk around on the beach without being on private property. I would invite you to come and talk to the community before you kind of go through lengthy studies. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm gonna ask that people not clap because for the people you don't clap for, I mean, so let's keep the decorum. Thank you very much. Please state your name and residence.
Hello, my name is Dan Hodgson and I live in the Tillicum neighborhood. I've lived in Lakewood for just about 30 years now, I think. And so I had one thing that I wanted to ask City Council's help with, and two things I just kind of wanted to mention. But a few years ago, Lakewood started putting in these nice sidewalks with the hard curb all throughout the neighborhood. Now, all of my vehicles fit onto my property. I don't have this issue. But a lot of the property owners and the renters there, they used to park their vehicles in their yard, and they can't get their vehicles there now because of the curb and the sidewalk. So that forces them to park on the street. Now, again, this isn't a problem that I have, but when the fire truck or when the school buses are trying to get through there, there isn't enough room for two lanes of traffic anymore because you have residences parking on both sides of the street. For the school bus, it's definitely a problem, but when the fire truck is coming, the fire truck has to wait for 2 or 3 vehicles to back up to the next block so the fire truck can get past. I think that's a pretty big problem, and I would never bring a problem without a solution. It seems very easy to me to just make a lot of those streets one-way streets. You know, that would only cost a post and a sign and some city labor to put that in. And seeing as how I've got a minute and a half left, a couple of things that I just wanted to mention that I've heard some scuttlebutt about doing some rezoning around Lakewood to hopefully bring in some pot shops to get the tax revenue from that. And I've also heard some scuttlebutt about bringing in some tiny home villages and stuff like that. I am absolutely against anything like that. You can't show me any place anywhere where that has ever worked. You know, and I don't think the city needs more money. Maybe the city needs to just spend less money. Anyhow, I like the idea of keeping Lakewood small, keeping Lakewood quiet, and keeping Lakewood clean. So, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? Anybody else who would like to speak tonight? Please come up to the podium.
I'm Chris Kaufman, live at 6627 Hilltop Lane Southwest, not too far from Dresden. And I was conceived in a lake in 1943. No, it was 41. that was south of Everett. And that was quite a while ago. I still enjoy lakes, and I've lived on Gravelly Lake for over 55 years, raised 3 kids there. And Gravelly Lake is one of 7,937 lakes documented in these books that I got published when I was wearing a different hat as head of policy planning and engineering for the state of Washington. That was back in the 70s, 60s, and 70s. Lakewood has some 14 named lakes. 4 of those lakes fall under your Shoreline Management Act. 3 of those lakes are navigable lakes. The bed and the shorelines are owned by Department of Natural Resources unless the upland owners have purchased an interest in them. There's one non-navigable lake of those 4, and that's Gravelly Lake. The upland owners own the shoreline and extend out through the bed. The waters of the lake are public except for those that are privately appropriated. It's a little different. You need to know the difference between navigability and non-navigability. And the owners on Gravelly Lake pay for planting fish and for fireworks that we have each year on the lake. And Distance family comes down and views the fireworks, and they're fairly spectacular. I think that the public should have rights to the lakes of Washington. The 7,937 in here that are accepted from Gravelly Lake. I think that Gravelly Lake needs to stay the way it is in terms of ownership, access to the lake. And I'm biased. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kaufman. Anyone else? Anyone else? Get your 3 minutes. Any other speakers? Anyone else who'd like to speak? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing or the whatever we're in now. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your comments. So next up, Ms. Schumacher, could you please read in the consent agenda?
Consent agenda: A, approval of the minutes of the city council meeting of April 6, 2026. B, motion number 2026-27, authorizing the execution of necessary agreements with the 6 remnant defendants related to the national opioid settlement. C, motion number 2026-28, authorizing the execution of an amendment to the agreement with Facet Northwest in the amount of $50,000 for street end design services for the Westlake Street End project. D, motion number 2026-29, authorizing the execution of an agreement with Salish Construction Company in the amount of $324,808 for the streetlight installation project. E, motion number 2026-30, authorizing the execution of an amendment to the agreement with EXP US Services in the amount of $137,515 to reflect state climate change grant funding. F, motion number 2026-31, authorizing the execution of an amendment to the agreement with Pacific Point Defense in the amount of $86,000 for public defense services. G, items filed in the office of the city clerk. 1, Lakewood's Promise Advisory Board meeting minutes of March 5th, 2026. 2, Lakewood Arts Commission meeting minutes of March 9th, 2026. And 3, Planning Commission meeting minutes of March 18th, 2026.
Thank you very much, Ms. Schumacher. Are there any items a council member wishes to remove from the consent agenda, and no second is required to move any item? Okay. So we have no items removed from the consent agenda, I would ask for a motion and second to adopt the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second?
And is there are there any comments anyone would like to make about the consent agenda? I would just add, there's a lot of interesting things on here, a lot of different things, like as we do for a city, and look forward to some of these things occurring. I think we're going to have some discussions about some of the items in the future. So all those in favor of adoption of the consent agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed signify by saying nay. The ayes have it. The consent agenda is approved. Next is Ms. Schumacher for the public hearings and appeals.
This is the date set for a public hearing on the fiscal year 2026 Community Development Block Grant, CDBG Annual Action Plan for CDBG and Home Programs.
Thank you very much, Ms. Schumacher. Mr. Gum, Program Manager Jeff Gum, to tell us about the, and this begins at page 47, so if people are watching at home, they can look at page 47 of the agenda, and it's the start of a rather, I believe, voluminous, well, it's not all that voluminous tonight, is it? And it looks like we do have someone to speak. So anyway, Mr. Gum, go ahead.
So good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. So tonight is the night that is set aside for an annual public hearing. It's done annually for CDBG and home funding. We receive those funds through the United States Housing and Urban Development. Those funds are allocated each and every year to benefit low and moderate income individuals. The requirements for that funding is we hold a public hearing, we hold a 30-day public comment period, and then when those funds, when they're allocated, they're sent to HUD through an electronic system. They are allocated no later than May 15th of this year. So again, tonight is the public hearing on the CDBG and home funding, specifically. Allocations that the city has published are as such. CDBG proposal to allocate $412,719.83 to the major home repair program, $25,000 to the housing emergency assistance for displaced residents program, $10,000 for CDBG emergency payments program, $12,000 for the CDBG admin of home housing services, and $96,000 for administration of the program. One thing that I can say is since we've published this, HUD has come out and finally given us our city's allocation of what our CDBG funds are. So they're slightly higher, about 5%. So we proposed a $480,000 allocation. The CDBG funds that we were said to receive are now $515,000, so about $32,000 more. So what we're doing is we're moving forward with the advertised funding sources and then adjusting them on a pro rata basis as we approve them. So that's typically how we do those. Typically HUD's kind of lagging this process on our allocation. So we have to kind of figure how we're going to allocate those, and typically pro rata is the process. So for the home funds for fiscal year 2026, we're proposing to allocate $347,146 to the Affordable Housing Fund and $38,571 to administration. Again, the allocation was received since we published this notice. Home funds, we're looking to receive $251,791, so about $1,300 more, fairly insignificant amount. But again, that would be a pro rata adjustment to the two funds that are proposed. So moving forward, this process does come back to council for May 4th for approval. Again, it is to be proposed to go to HUD on May 15th. So with that, any questions?
Thank you very much, Mr. Gum. So this is a public hearing. Public testimony is accepted by mail, email, or live, virtual, or in-person comment. Send testimony in advance by mail or email to Brianna Schumacher, City Clerk at 6000 Main Street Southwest, Lakewood, Washington, 98499, or B. Schumacher at cityoflakewood.us. Testimony received up to 1 hour before the meeting has been provided to the city council electronically. Ms. Schumacher, did we get any dealing with the CDBG?
Mayor, you received no testimony in advance of this evening's meeting.
Thank you. Please, the testimony is limited to 3 minutes per person. When called upon, please state your name and city of residence for the public record. So I'd like to open the public hearing, and first we will go to Zoom, and anybody on their Zoom or phone calling in to speak to the CDBG public hearing. So this is a public hearing on the fiscal year 2026 Community Development Block Grant Annual Action Plan for our CDBG and home programs. Schumacher, do we have anybody on the line for public comment?
Mayor, there are no virtual hands raised at this time.
Thank you very much. So in person, it looks like Mr. Kaufman signed up on this, but he's no longer in the room. So my guess is he saw the public hearing thing and signed up for the other one, and unless he's available. So are there any other individuals that would like to speak to the CDBG Home Annual Action Plan for fiscal year 2026? Any speakers at all? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing for that. Thank you very much, Mr. Gum. Appreciate it. We will now consider ordinance number 849. This was continued.
Mayor, I have a point of order.
Yep. Councilmember Branstetter.
When we met 2 weeks ago, the action taken by the council was to carry forward ordinance to this date. And the constructs of that were that we did that because a member or members of the council wished to propose an amendment to the ordinance, but they wanted time to have it drafted. The ordinance that's in our agenda for today is not the ordinance that we voted to bring forward to today. It is a changed ordinance that already incorporated the amendment that was not voted on, not debated, and it's inconsistent with the action that's there. So I would say that considering this ordinance as it is published in the agenda is out of order.
So Ms. Wachter. So what Councilmember Branstetter is stating, and I believe that it's true, is there was discussion surrounding this ordinance when we continued it, that there was going to be an amendment offered. But the amendment has now been incorporated, and I believe we're talking, well, it's somewhere in there. We saw it earlier today. I thought I was in the right spot, but could you speak to that, please? And well, actually speak to his point.
Yes, Mayor Boki and members of the council, Heidi Wachter, city attorney, and everything that comes before you is supposed to go through me, as this did. And so this is a miss on my part. It's the last part in that chain. I think it sounds like what you wanted to do was maybe have the amendment brought separately to discuss. Is that correct? And I'm at the meetings and I saw the document, and I apologize for not bringing it before you in that way. How we proceed from here is entirely up to the body. If the intent was to just discuss that piece separately, I might need a minute to maybe make that clear in our legislative record, or we could bring it back at a different time.
Yeah, I think we're talking about on page 56 of the packet, I believe it would be item number 7. Accessory dwelling units located on the same lot as the primary residence and where the owner continues to reside in either the primary residence or accessory dwelling unit, and that adds to our list of exceptions to the plan. Is that correct? So, and I believe that it was Councilmember Pearson who was bringing that forward. So I think the intent of the council was that we would look at it as a separate amendment, because I don't know that that night we agreed to put that in there as such.
Well,
Right? I think that's what Councilmember Brandstetter is stating.
And Mr. Mayor, and my point of order is that the ordinance that's in our agenda is out of order. And we should not consider it tonight. And that the ordinance that we wanted to have continued can be put in a future agenda as continued to be able to go and do that. But because it was published the way that it is, it's it's not consistent with the action that we took 2 weeks ago.
So
And the change was not debated or voted on, and so it, it isn't one that during the discussion there was consensus to incorporate it. It was, I mean, certainly I voted to continue it so that an amendment could be drafted, and then the draft amendment could be proposed tonight. But that's not what has happened. And so I would say that for tonight, this is out of order, and we should move to a future meeting where a proper ordinance is posted in the agenda, and we can move forward with amendments, any amendments to the ordinance that any of us might wish to bring.
Thank you, Councilmember Brandstetter. So this,
Councilmember Pearson.
okay, go ahead. Councilmember Pearson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I don't disagree with Mr. Brandstetter's points here. I would say that this ordinance is the amendment that I had suggested that was included in item number 7. It would be fairly clean to make an amendment tonight if we wanted to strike that out. But I think it wouldn't be totally inappropriate to discuss it and just move forward tonight. Although I do recognize that it is out of order. But in light of just moving things along, I'd like to have the discussion if we can and go that route, but I'm open to whatever.
So this is where we get ourselves in a little bit of trouble, because at a lot of times at study sessions, we'll just throw ideas and staff goes in and changes things. Sometimes in a substantive manner, not just a lot of things. So we have always sometimes, in this case, if it's on me, I'm going to find his motion, or Councilmember Brandstetter's motion, to be correct. And I'd like this continued until a date certain with the original ordinance that we looked at 2 weeks ago, I believe, with that amendment pulled out, but the amendment being presented, if Councilmember Pearson would like to do that. And then we can debate and discuss it at that time.
If I want to be completely clear, so what the council wants to see is the original ordinance and a proposed amendment that we incorporated here, but we would not incorporate it when it comes forward. You would have both things to look at.
Correct.
Right.
I think that's where we're at. We're not talking about the amendment, so we'll just do that to some. But we don't have the original motion in front of us, the original ordinance in front of us. So you'll just have to understand that that's what we're trying to do. So I'll look for Councilmember Brandstetter to make that motion. To move it to.
Mr. Mayor, I move to further advance, trying to think of the ordinance number, but the ordinance to a date certain of our next meeting, which I believe is May 3rd.
2 weeks from now, so I don't know what date that is.
May 4th.
May 4th.
May 4th.
May 4th to actually bring back the motion that was on the agenda on April 6th that we asked, that we sought to continue.
The original motion of April 6th, 2026 will now be continued.
Further
until-
continue it to May 4th.
To the May 4th Lakewood Council meeting. And that would be the original ordinance. So we need a second.
I'll second that, Mayor.
Okay. I don't know if this has discussion on it or not. We just. Okay.
Unless people want to.
All those
discuss it
in
at the
favor of
required.
continuing ordinance number 849 signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed signify by saying nay. The ayes have it. So we will look at that first thing on May 4th.
And we'll bring you back something consistent with our discussion tonight.
Thank you. We'll now consider resolution number 2026-01. So Ms. Schumacher, please read resolution 2026-01 into the record.
Resolution number 2026-01, amending the city's purchasing policies.
Thank you very much. And I don't know what page, I guess that starts on page 60 of our packet. And who's going to speak to this? Ms. Wachter, welcome.
Good evening again, Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, members of the council, Heidi Wachter, City Attorney. This is a purely housekeeping type of action. And I will have to tell you, I made a mistake on this one as well because I didn't highlight where the changes were going to be. And I'll point them out when we get to that. The first paragraph in the agenda bill, I explained that the small works roster language is being taken out because the state laws repealed it. So we're cleaning that out of the purchasing policies. And then if you go to page 76 of your packet, section 27, that language is in response to the state passing laws around apprenticeship training programs. And they are in tandem with us doing this. We are also bringing language into our different contracts depending on the level of the contract. So this is just to describe what we're doing. And then there'll also be language in the contracts. The contract part is the part that's truly required. This is more just reflecting that we're aware of the law and trying to follow it. I'd be happy to try and answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Ms. Wachter. Any questions for Ms. Wachter? Councilmember Brandstetter.
Ms. Walter, I am trying to understand. This is a completely new set of policies, or is it a set of policies that we're making changes to?
Section 27 is new. What the state law now requires is that we make certain efforts, depending on the level of the contract, to include apprenticeship programs. And if we can't, we then have to demonstrate the effort that we made to include apprenticeship programs, because we'll find instances where none of the responsive bidders were able to meet it. And so anyway, the law that we're now beholden to is something that came through. I don't think this most recent session, I think it was before that, but it's now mandated that we do these things.
So section 27.
Correct.
In the document.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
Is
and it starts on,
is it a totally new section, or is it a rewording of what is our current policy? And the reason that I ask is it isn't redlined.
Yeah, I know, I acknowledged that when I made my opening statements that I had made that mistake here and not making it red. I believe it should be entirely red. We were not subject to apprenticeship requirements before this. There was law saying that we needed to make an effort and so forth, but now it's actually required.
Okay.
And that's, again, that's my fault.
I understand. Why did it become 27 instead of just becoming the next numerical policy?
I think we decided that based on where it fit into the bidding world. So as you can see, section 26 says alternative public works contracting. That's sort of something that has to do with bidding. Section 28 is bonds and bid security. It seemed like the right place to put it because that's sort of all things bidding. I think it's more art than science, but it seemed like it made sense there.
Okay, and the fiscal impact note in the request for council action says that there's no fiscal impact to
Arguably,
adopting the policy.
Correct.
But is the changed policy going to have a fiscal impact on what we end up doing and on contracts and purchases that we make?
it would arguably have a financial impact if we had a higher bidder that was better able to meet the apprenticeship qualifications than a lower bidder who couldn't. We would then be forced to go to that slightly higher bidder who has the apprenticeship qualifications, because it's creating sort of a new bar that bidders have to meet, right? And we're low bid. We typically would pick the low bid, but arguably somebody who's not meeting the apprenticeship requirements is not a qualified bidder anymore. So that's where it could cost a little bit more.
Okay, well, I guess to say that if we approve this policy as it changes, does that mean that when we are going to have to add some language when we are soliciting bids to that process?
Yes, the state law requires that we make it clear in our bid documents what would make somebody a qualified bidder. And that could be considered the basis for a challenge if we don't do our bids correctly.
Okay, and which consortium of folks on the staff then become responsible for overseeing that?
It actually, it's a process that's already in place. You have the city clerk who does the posting for bids and opening the bids and so forth. Your parks director has already brought one of these questions to me a couple of months ago because it came up in the context of one of the bids. So anyone who oversees contracts is now required to sort of understand that this is part of a contract.
Okay, but this only applies to contracts for capital projects?
Capital projects, public works, those types of things. Yes, things that would be subject to bidding.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Mayor.
Anyone else like to speak to this? I think the other issue is it says we're getting rid of the small works roster, but section 25 isn't struck. So should that be struck also?
Mm.
Do we need an amendment, or is that just?
Yes, that's the language that's intended to be taken out.
The section 25, small works roster, beginning on page 75 of the packet, is struck out in its entirety, and it goes down to.
It appears that the city manager has been paying better attention to the packet than I have. He has shown me the March study session item, and yes, it's the entirety of that section that would come out.
Okay, so this is one of those, now we've published this as not, so I think we should probably officially strike it.
Correct.
I'll look for you're looking for an amendment that would strike section 25 beginning on page 75 of the packet in its entirety. So it would go down to strike everything to the word cancellation right before section 26. I don't want to start striking things that we may regret. Kind of interesting they're getting rid of the small works roster. That's been a mainstay of
That made no
so many cities, municipal governments for so long. So now you got to put up everything for bid, or anyway, that's a different question entirely.
I don't.
It went away. Oh, okay.
I was just making sure that I was tracking, but yes, everything under small works roster should come out.
There's no new language that needs to be inserted in there.
They repealed it completely, the whole statute.
Okay,
I know, it's a little bit surprising, but that's what they did.
looking for an amendment. Councilmember Branstetter. Oh, wait. have we- no, we haven't
Mr.
even-
Mayor, I move adoption
Nope, yeah.
of resolution number 2026-01.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Now we can have council member discussion and amendments to this. Thank you very much, Councilmember Branstad.
All right, Mr. Mayor, I move to amend resolution 2026-01 by striking section 25 and then renumbering the following amendments appropriately to maintain sequential numbering.
Okay.
Second?
Second. It's been moved and seconded that we strike section 25 small works roster in its entirety and renumber all the other sections accordingly. Is there any discussion surrounding this? Okay. I'm looking at Ms. Wachter. Do you have anything else to add, Ms. Wachter?
Well, we're trying to reconcile what I approved versus what you looked at in March. And that is where the consternation's coming in a little bit.
Okay.
Because this says.
You know what? Maybe we should just let's just continue this item then.
Yeah, and I
Can you
apologize for
move-
not being prepared.
Yeah, okay, so let's move to, can I get a motion to continue this item to,
It will be ready at the
February
next
or
meeting.
May 4th. So moved.
Second.
it's been moved and seconded that we continue resolution number 2026-01 to the May 4th meeting. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. So we've continued that to the May 4th meeting. And I think we're looking for the appropriate struck section and the highlighted portion of the new, or however we do it. The red line strikeout. Thank you. Items for discussion. So, Mr. City Manager, do we have any unfinished business?
No, you're not.
Do we have any new business? Okay, items for discussion. We move into the study session portion of our meeting. The review of the first quarter 2026 police report, and there he is. Chief Patrick Smith, Chief of Police of the Lakewood Police Department, and it begins on page 79 of your packet. Get it? Oh, good. Thanks, Chief. The floor is yours, Chief.
All right, thank you, sir. Thank you. Hey, good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and members of council. This evening, we'll be going over the first quarter of 2026 police report and stats. So as we start out the beginning of the year, coming from the fourth quarter, you'll see a reduction of about 10% in our calls for service throughout the city, which is more in line with 2024, slightly down even from that as it relates to our calls for service. Our number of arrests on this report is down as compared to 2025, is more in line with 2024. As we go through all of last year, we had significant decreases in crime throughout the city. And overall, it shows a decrease in our arrests. At some point, there's a course correction of showing a lesser arrest based upon the number of calls for service that we are receiving and activity in the city. In our crimes against persons, we're still showing a drastic reduction in our aggravated assaults. We're down 46.7%. Our simple assaults were down 5%. And our homicides, we went 15 months without a homicide in the city of Lakewood. The homicide that's represented here is the result of a 2-year-old child, basically a child abuse related crime, not a stranger danger type of crime. Our robberies are down 10%, and our sex crimes are slightly up at the start of the year at 55%. And we have a total crime reduction of 12% in our crimes against persons. As you can see, our year over year in the lower corner, we're still showing down as compared to 2025 as well as 2024, significant reduction since 2024. Our crimes against property and societal crimes, our total is down 30%. Burglaries were down 20%. Fraud was down 41%. Larceny, 39%. At the start of the year, we saw our first increase in 3 years in our motor vehicle thefts. Our stolen property was down 47%, vandalism down 31%, and our weapons laws, we saw them come up 26%. Once again, in the lower right-hand corner, you see the drastic reduction from 2024 to 2025 to where we are now, which is a significant drop in the number of crimes that we're seeing in the city. As far as our pursuits and elude activity, we were slightly up on our pursuits at 26.7%, and our eludes were up 30%. But as you can see on both charts, we're trending downward in those areas. This was a slight uptick at the start of the year in Q1. Our shots fired, we remain even with 2025 at this time, at about 50. So we had no increase during this time frame. Our motor vehicle thefts on here, it shows we were up 23.7% in the first quarter. And if you look at the sheet that I passed out to you, that's our Chief's Daily Report. It shows the correction that has been made in that area where we're down 3.8% in our stolen vehicles year to date. Our collisions, we're down 10% as compared to 2025. We've been trending downward in this area, and hopefully we can have a stronger impact on our collisions. And our major factor here is primarily speed within the city. This is our summary of all of the crimes that I went over. And I wanted to touch on the daily crime report that Chief's Daily Crime and Incident Report that I passed out to you. On there, you'll see that we are continuing to show crime reduction in most areas. Our ag assaults as of today were down 44%. Our sex crimes were down 25%, and our total was down 31%. Our burglaries are down 10% as of today, or 9.1, I'm sorry. Our larcenies are down 29%, and our motor vehicle theft is down 3.8%. Our robberies were down 8.3%, and our total for today was down 24% in our property crimes. Our shots fired has come down from the earlier report, and that's down that is up 16.9% as compared to last year. So I'll go back just in case you have any questions for me.
Are there any questions for Chief Smith? Councilmember Lauricella.
Thank you, Mayor Bofi, and thank you, Chief Smith, for this presentation.
Yes, sir.
Our police officers are doing excellent work, and that's reflected in all the crime rates going down. I see arrests are down, and I know this is probably out of your lane, but in theory, should we also see that the number of cases we're prosecuting correlate with that?
Yes, definitely. Everything stays on track as our crime goes down. Overall, our arrests are going to come down with that. In addition to the crimes that we're prosecuting will definitely come down significantly.
Great, thank you. And then my other question, are you familiar with a tool called ShotSpotter?
Yes.
What are your thoughts on that as a potential thing we could have?
You know, as it relates to the city of Lakewood, I think we would be better served placing that money into other things that would bring us more value. I can't recall a time we've had a homicide or anything of that nature where we did not get 911 calls. Typically, ShotSpotter is used in environments where people will not call the police or are in fear of calling the police. And therefore, ShotSpotter is a good tool to use in those areas. And it allows officers to respond quickly to those calls. I've been in jurisdictions where we've used ShotSpotter and those without. If I were investing in additional technology, I would steer my money into something more significant that's going to reduce the crime specifically for Lakewood and not just a ShotSpotter type of deal. If you look at our shots fired, so far we had been trending down in this area. And this time we remain pretty much even. But in this community, when there are shots fired or something going on, we'll usually get a 911 call.
Great, thank you.
Yes, sir.
And Councilmember Pearson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Chief, for the presentation, and kind of adding on to a little bit of Councilmember Lauricella's comments about caseloads and things like that. There's been some discussion around the state about, what levels we're charging at, with the indigent defense. It's obviously kind of putting some scrutiny to that. And so one of the areas that comes to mind is traffic related. And do you think there's any potential for us to look into particular types of crimes that are, maybe not as egregious or as heinous as others, to look at reducing caseloads by chance? And then what kind of consequences or challenges could that make for you and your department if things aren't charged and people are being let go and not charged?
So yours related to traffic collisions?
Well, it could be anything, but that one kind of came to mind as not a, it's not like it's a domestic violence or some other type of, robbery and theft that would be more of a aggressive crime.
So the problem for us when things are not charged or is that our concern is the fact that it's going to occur again, or is this a repeat offender or someone else that we're going to have to deal with? I think it's incumbent upon us to put together very good cases so that when they are reviewed at the prosecutor's office, that we have sound cases that are put together that are prosecutable, and that we're delivering all of the evidence necessary. I think that quite a few of our cases do move forward. So I think that one's going to be kind of hard because, you would need someone from the prosecution side as well as here to really have a good analysis on all of our cases to show the prosecution as well as based on arrest on what we do. I'm
Yeah.
not sure if I'm answering your question.
No, yeah, it does. I really appreciate that because I think you kind of touched on it early on, which is what I expected was that you're going to be seeing a lot of the same people over and over
Yeah.
again with really nothing going on, right?
Right.
There's no, if you're there, we're not continuing to charge, we're not continuing to prosecute. If that's the case, then we're just kind of starting the process over and over. So,
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Pearson. Councilmember Talbot.
Thank you, Chief Smith, for the report. A couple of months ago, I had the pleasure of being able to participate on a ride along, excuse me, also with a tour of the station
Mhm.
from Sergeant David. So I appreciate that. One of the interesting parts of the tour was noting the forensics lab, and it's my understanding that we've had a vacancy of someone that can run the forensics lab for some time. I just wanted to know if there's any update or status on the recruitment of a position that is able to operate the forensics lab so that we can use it, so that we can continue to use it, or is it being used?
Forensics, vacancy in the forensics? I don't believe that's accurate. We've had our same team and our evidence and forensics. They've been pretty solid here the whole time. We've had one consistent team. And so we are able to operate effectively. I'm not sure which particular part he was referring to when he spoke to you.
Yeah, sure. No, thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. And that could just be my own misunderstanding. So
Yeah, our team has been together for quite some time.
thank you. Thank you. Then I think just as a layman's here looking at just overall numbers that we have in front of us and seeing that there is a nice drop across years. I'm just wondering if you can offer any insight as to overall what if we have seen or performed any just general analytics that speak to the reasons for the overall drop, in addition to the changes that we've made from beefing up the patrols in the town center. But I guess I think what I'm trying to ask is overall, are we also are we experiencing upticks in numbers that we aren't seeing in these reports, such as the number of investigations, digital fraud, or cyber crimes, or other less reported type of crimes? Or really, do the numbers in front of us give us a best picture of data that we should be proud of?
Okay, so I can answer those questions. First, across the nation, crime has been trending downward for a good time now. But fortunately, in the third quarter of 2023, the City Council approved us to move to the Flock system as well as other LPR systems. In fact, we use grant money also to expand our system, and that has been one of our number one areas of that has helped us to reduce crime here in Lakewood. Secondly, we also increased our activity in the town center. In the town center, we have full-time business district car that provides direct support to the businesses there. They have the officer's telephone number so that they can call 911. They can also call the officers who are here directly. They provide high visibility patrol with their lights on throughout the day and as well as in the evening while businesses are operational, and assist the businesses at the end of the day as they are leaving as a high visibility presence. In addition to that, we also balanced the officers' hours. We looked at the officers' hours of operation based on the calls for service, and we started to match and monitor the calls for service to ensure that we were matching the number of officers based on calls for service, to ensure that we were reducing our response time to those calls for service. So we have done quite a few things to reduce crime here in areas where we saw gaps in our service, gaps in our areas such as in the parks and things of that nature. We added additional patrols to the park, even on overtime for a while. We added real-time cameras to the park through our flock agreement. And so we have cameras in some of the parks to make sure that we're providing a good quality level of service. Just recently, we added to our detective bureau, which we call MUD days. And those are mandatory uniform deployments where we have a special project, special area, or special thing that's going on within the community, and we put full force on that particular problem or problem area to ensure that we are going in to try to clean up any problems or areas as they occur, as they start. And we try to itemize each of the problems that we're trying to resolve. One good example is last week, I received an email from the city manager about the library and saying that, hey, we're having issues at the library. He sent me pictures, et cetera. But our guys who were monitoring what's going on in the community, we had already set up cleanup for that day, and they were already in action as his email came through. And we were able to provide him pictures back to show what we've done, cleaning up the area, making sure that people were where they were supposed to be and not in the city's right of way. So we've been trying to do a lot to stay on top of what's happening with crime in the city. The best part about it with the stark reductions in crime, what it allows us to do is to focus on some of the quality of life issues that we've had within the city that have kind of lingered, but we didn't have the time to address. So now we're trying to address the quality of life issues that have cropped up over the years to make sure that we're addressing the needs within the community.
Thank you, Chief. I appreciate that. I was really just wanting to understand a little more deeper under the hood of the lesser known statistics and things we don't see in the reports in front of us, and I appreciate
Yes,
that.
and as far as the ones that you don't see, we have not had the same issue in the cyber related crimes or things of that nature that have truly cropped up in the neighborhoods.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Lindholm, and then I'll go to Councilmember Brandstetter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Chief, thank you for this report. You know, one thing that doesn't show up in the numbers and something you and I have talked about before is homelessness here in Lakewood. I wonder if you can give council just a brief overview of the standards and procedures of how you deal with someone or interact with someone that you meet on the street who's experiencing a crisis, who might be homeless.
Okay, so some of the homeless that we have within the community, we are fortunate enough that we have been able to identify most of them. We have a team that go out, our mental health professionals, as well as the officers who patrol with them. We go out, we talk to them, we identify them, try to determine what needs they have, what we can offer. There's probably one gentleman, we've gotten him housing maybe 3 times, but he still ends up coming right back out to, he'll abandon the housing and come right back out to 100th over next to the Ram, regardless of how many times we have gotten him housing. So we continue to do that. Usually on, I want to say Fridays, we have one of our officers who go out and specifically deal with those who are in some form of crisis or looking for housing so that we can try to match them with any of the available resources or if we can identify a place to get them. Sometimes it takes a couple of weeks. Sometimes it may take months for them to finally agree to allow us to provide them some form of housing or to match them with some available housing. So it's something that we are constantly working on and constantly trying to improve within the city because we recognize that we do have an issue from time to time with homelessness. We were just able to get an agreement with the library here because the library area was, pretty much hands off. They didn't want any enforcement. And so we finally got an agreement with them so that we can work to make sure that that area is clean as well as the city's right of way.
Thank you. Just one very quick follow-up, if I may. So if I heard you correctly, it is up to the person to accept services. And if they say no, then what?
If they say no, then we'll try to move them along, or we'll try to find out exactly what the issue is. We continue to work with them. We don't just walk away. Like I said, we identify each of them. We try to identify the needs. We try to identify if it's mental health or whatever the said issue is, and we try to identify housing for that particular person or persons. But we don't give up on them.
I know I spoke to an officer about a year ago, and they say it's not uncommon necessarily to maybe visit the same person 3 times in a day. Is that still the case?
It is. Our officers, like I said, here in Lakewood, fortunately, we get to know those individuals, and we try not to be a stranger to them. And sometimes we have to take them out, little care packages, little hygiene kits and things of that nature so that we can break down the walls and also try to gain some common ground and communication so that we can work with them to get them into housing. And it's an ongoing process.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. Councilmember Brandstetter.
Yeah, Chief, thanks for being here this evening and for your report. But I'd like to just ask you about a topic that doesn't appear in your report.
Okay.
But that is virtually always in community association and neighborhood association meetings brought up, and that is traffic enforcement, particularly speeding things that's over there. And so your officers who go to those meetings are constantly asked those questions.
Yes.
And their accurate but standard response has been, well, if you have an area that it is, I'll report it to the sergeant who's in charge of traffic, and he has himself and 2 people. And that it gives the impression that that's exclusively the team where, other than for photo enforcement, that traffic enforcement is centered in. And that response is pretty standard, no matter which one of your officers at which one of the neighborhood association things that it is. But when I talk to officers, they indicate that the officers who are on patrol, they have the priority of things they're supposed to deal with, but they're not precluded from traffic enforcement. It's just that often there's things that they've already been dispatched to because of 911 calls or whatever are is that they don't do that. But I think if you could perhaps talk about and take a look at what really is the message you want your officers to tell the community about how speed enforcement particularly, but other driver behavior enforcements are being handled. Because we've created the impression that there just aren't enough people to do it. But we're not really communicating how much we're doing. Like, we're not saying we issued 80 citations to do that, or the combination of collisions and citations is this, do that. So it's more of a messaging issue that's there. And it may well be that the weekly reports that you actually have published in the weekly bulletin, if they could begin to address traffic enforcement to show the level of activity that is actually there, which is more than we're leading people to believe, I think.
Well, sir, just so you know, the traffic report, traffic citations and collisions are included on the weekly report that I put out on Fridays. And so that's over in the right column, the lower right, and the section just above that. I give the weekly statistics for all traffic citations as well as traffic collisions within the city. And that comes out every Friday. And we place it on our Facebook page. And it's the normal blue deal that's there. And so to go back to answer your questions, at the meeting, what they're referring to is the traffic section and traffic coordination is done by the sergeant in the traffic coordination unit. And so they basically set the priorities. They receive the 311 information as well as calls related to traffic within the community, and they set the priorities. They also do direct enforcement in those areas that we receive information about. And so, but just so you know, traffic enforcement is every officer's job. It's not just the job of those who work in the traffic, particularly traffic unit. So those who worked the traffic unit previously that promoted, they still come back and they ride motors and they still do traffic enforcement. In the mornings, we have even one officer, Officer Danley, if I'm not mistaken, he's written over 500 tickets just this past year on his own. And so has Officer Valley, or Sergeant Valley now. He wrote probably 500 citations last year on his own. And those two gentlemen primarily focus in the school zones where we have people coming through all the time. If they don't have a camera there, they are primarily focused in those school districts and school zones. And so when I think it's kind of confusing because people are thinking just these two people or this sergeant is doing it. No, that sergeant is the one who's taking in all the information and setting out the priority of areas that we need to hit. Also, all of the direct enforcement and things of that nature. So every officer is responsible for traffic enforcement.
And that has been my understanding. Okay, to do that,
yes.
It's just that we're somehow not getting that message out to the community, and from time to time, different officers of yours who are dealing with certain specialized things do go to neighborhood associations and talk, but I can't recall one of where the traffic sergeant has gone and actually gone and explained the bigger picture about how traffic enforcement works. And so he suffers from the fact that the other officers that it's easier for them to default to say, well, the traffic section coordinates that, but it's only 3 people. So maybe there is a strategy to perhaps have a more comprehensive presentation made to selected neighborhood associations that might like to have that.
So now the traffic sergeant does go to the neighborhood association meetings. He rotates to each meeting to ensure that the information is getting out, and also to talk about how he coordinates traffic within the city.
Okay, I guess that I've never collided with him.
Oh, okay.
In that regard, to be able to go and do that. But then on a similar thing, the council asks the Public Safety Advisory Committee to assist and work with you regarding some locations of where we may increase our photo enforcement options. How is that process going? Is it progressing?
Yes. So at the last meeting, they went through and approved the areas that were selected for additional enforcement, camera-related enforcement.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any more questions for Chief Smith? Well, thank you very much, Chief Smith. We appreciate the information. I really do, and I think all of us appreciate the weekly reports that come out. Really giving us a good idea, and we just express our deep appreciation for the men and women in our department who have done such a good job. I think it's really noticeable. I know the perception of crime always lags the actual numbers. I mean, I've had discussions with people in years past, but I think it's pretty clear out there, especially in the town center area, that crime has dropped, and I think more and more people recognize that. So, thank you very much for you and your team's efforts.
Yes, thank you, sir.
Thank you. So up next, review of the 2025 Transportation Benefit District Annual Report. This is required, I believe, and Ms. Kraus is gonna lead the way on this. Thank you,
Good
Ms.
evening.
Kraus, and welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Deputy Mayor and council members. This is the 2025 annual report. It is a required report that we submit on an annual basis. So in 2025, there wasn't a whole lot of activity. I'm showing is our vehicle licensing fees came in at about 805,000, and that's been consistent where the revenues have been for the past couple of years. On the expenditure side, we have used the funds to pay for the debt service. So pretty much you have committed the TBD dollars for debt service payments. But you did have some monies that were left over from prior years, and those funds were used to pay for new LED streetlights, some minor capital and major maintenance funds, and chip seal programs. So not anything major in 2025. And moving forward into 2026, we'll continue these programs, particularly the new LED streetlights, which will have a budget of about 428,000 if you approve the rollover of funds in 2026. Minor capital projects will continue at 392,000 in 2026, and chip seal program of 638,000 in 2026. So it's a brief report this year because we've already committed the dollars. So that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Kraus. Any questions for Ms. Kraus? Councilmember Laura Sella.
Thank you, Mayor Boki, and thank you, Ms. Kraus, for the brief report. And this may be a question better suited for another portion, but talking about LED streetlights, I know there are systems out there that have motion sensing streetlights, so they will dim when there aren't people going by at night. and those from some quick searching say that they tend to pay for themselves in 3 to 4 years. Is that something we've looked into at all?
We have looked at reducing the hours that the lights are on. Now, whether we have looked at them in terms of the on and off, I am not sure, but we can follow up with that. And I can give an update at our next, at the public hearing.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councilmember Talbot.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Deputy City Manager. My question is regarding the GO bond debt service. Is there language in the GO bond ordinance that specifies that projects and that CIP projects or projects spent out of those funds have to be specified in writing somewhere? Or is the language such that the funding can be distributed at will?
Sure. So the city council adopted an ordinance and updated that ordinance to identify specifically the transportation benefit district projects. In terms of the bond projects, it speaks to the projects that are to be funded, but it is broad enough to cover any transportation benefit district project.
Thank you. So I think what I'm trying to poke at a little bit, and we haven't seen the upcoming 6-year tip yet, but should there be any projects in the tip that are receiving TBD funds, are those projects, would those projects have been decided through adoption of being listed in the tip in some prior cycle, or would those projects have been decided of being listed in the GO bond?
The projects would have been identified as part of the projects that the city council authorized to be spent with TBD dollars. So because our TBD funds are about $805,000, that's what the revenue's been coming in at. Our debt service is just about $700,000. So that leaves on an annual basis of what, $100,000, $115,000. And the projects that are ongoing that could receive the TBD dollars would be things like your minor capital major projects, LED streetlights, if there were any new streetlights, and the chip seal program. There is also funding for that have been designated project to be used, TBD funds. It's for those professional service engineering services. So there is still a little bit of money. I will also point out that at the end of the year, we will have surplus funds of about $450,000. And I shouldn't say surplus funds. It is just the extra amount after we refinance the 2024 GO bonds. And because we had anticipated higher amounts for our debt service payments. So those are still all set aside to be used for TBD funded designated projects. I will tell you that from a real estate excise tax, our real estate excise tax hasn't been coming in at such healthy levels as they had previously. So in the past couple of years, it's been more of the 2.4 million. So it's always good to have a little bit of money set aside to fill those gaps if those other project dollars aren't coming in.
Okay, so I think I think I follow. So not necessarily surplus, but just unassigned to projects.
Correct. Yes, unassigned is a better word.
Thank you. And then as far as mitigation fees collected in the downtown, is there a balance to report, or is everything just so new because we adopted the planned action not long ago?
We actually have set it aside, and you'll see it in the carry forward budget adjustment. So all mitigation fees have been earmarked for a project.
Got it.
And we can get into that a little later.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Are there any other questions on the TBD annual report? And this has to come in front of us
Yes.
for a vote? Okay.
Yes, it'll come back to you on May 4th as a motion.
So the debt service, because this doesn't show debt service of,
It doesn't show for the new debt service. You'll see the new debt service in Q1.
okay, so the new debt
The
service
the
will
new
start
debt
this year.
service, Yeah, the new debt service budget adjustment is in the carry forward. So I've made an adjustment to reflect what our new debt service will be.
Okay, great. Thank you. So Ms. Kraus, on to, it's just your lucky night here. The 2025, beginning on page 91, the 2025 financial report, which
Yes,
takes
it
us
is.
exactly halfway through our biennium.
Yes, it is my lucky night because at least there's still money in there. So I'm going to turn your attention to page 93 of the report. And this is the summary for the general and street fund. And the reason why those two funds are combined is they are the main operating fund of the city. So the general fund provides over 60% of funding for the street fund, and thus they are combined. But on page 93, I just want to highlight that our operating revenues came in at about 1,868,000 more than we had budgeted. And on the expenditure side, we also had spent $1 million more, $1,117,000 more than we had anticipated. But at the end of 2025, just looking at the 2025 actuals, our ending fund balance came in at $11,800,000. And that 11 million includes the $6,700,000 that is part of the city council's financial policies where we maintain 12% reserves in the general fund. It also takes into consideration a set aside of about $78,000 for the property tax that we had been collecting to support the debt service on the tax increment financing. So I've kept that aside so that it doesn't get spent in any way, so we can have good accounting of it. So left at the end of 2025 is about $5 million. What you'll see going into the carry forward budget adjustment is those funds will be spent if you approve the carry forward budget adjustment, but it does leave about $1 million left that has been unallocated. You'll see that again in the carry forward budget adjustment. I do want to highlight a couple, on the revenue side, what is contributing to our $1,868,000 increase over budget is sales tax came in very healthy. So we did an adjustment during the mid-biennium. I think we increased it like maybe 200,000 or 300,000, but we came in at about 510,000 over the estimate. Utility tax came in at $161,000 over, but that also included some back taxes. We did an extensive audit of one of the phone providers and received some funding back. Not only that, but now we're going to be receiving future revenues as a result of that audit. So it's bringing them into compliance. Development services, permits and fees came in at $395,000 from where we had estimated. And then our police contracts came in, and this is the extra duty, came in at about $835,000 more than anticipated. But I do want to highlight that with that $835,000 comes the increase on the police side. So police's budget was operating budget spent $1,116,000 more than budgeted, but $918,000 of it came from extra duty. And the reason why you're seeing the extra duty expenditures exceeding the budget by $918,000, whereas the revenues is only $835,000, is because the medical portion of the officers are not being reimbursed by the extra duty, since those are already part of their base. And then the other piece of it is that caused the increase. Salaries and benefits was above the budget by $642,000, but there were a lot of retirements, and those retirements, the payouts so they can cash out their PTO, that came out to $382,000. So a good portion is, I guess I would say it's sort of one time in the sense that, when officers are allowed to cash out their leave bank, it can be at times $40,000 to $50,000 that is paid out. And then the other department that exceeded the budget estimate is planning and public works. But a good portion of that is covered by the additional revenues that came in. So that's the quick summary of the general and street fund.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kraus. And I just, there's a lot of information in here, right? And so, council members can entertain themselves for hours, really, over the next few weeks to really.
I can spend an hour right now if you want me to.
Tonight. We're not going to ask you to do that, but we may have some questions here, and I'm going to ask just a specific question. Can you, and I'll jump ahead right now because it's more of a question of just what's in there rather than ARPA. Can you talk about our ARPA expenditure? I don't know what page it's on, but I just want to make sure that we're on track to either spend the money or we still have the ability to fold it into the general fund, correct? Because we
Yes.
can do it up to 10 million.
Yes,
Okay.
and
What
you,
page are we looking at?
yeah, I'll get to that page. It is on page, very, very close. It is on page 163, and that starts off with the history of the ARPA funds. But to look at the spreadsheet that shows how we spent the money. So there is a combination of funds on page 164. The biggest portion is about the $13.67 million that we received in ARPA funds. Those dollars have an expiration of 12/31/2026. So there's maybe 8 months left to spend all of those funds, or less than 8 months. But then there was also some funding that came in as general fund dollars of about $872,000, and that was specifically for the downtown and Edgewater parks. And then through 2025, there was interest earnings of over $1 million. So at the end of 2025, there remains $1,191,132 in the ARPA funds, or in the ARPA fund, not all ARPA dollars, but in the ARPA fund. So ARPA grant balance that still needs to be spent is $1,079,000, and the interest earnings is $111,000. The City Council had already authorized that any unspent dollars in 2026, as we go along in 2026, can be spent for downtown and Edgewater parks. So as soon as projects are closed out, and we've been working with Tiffany Spear, who is oversees all of this. And the projects we have identified in the carry forward to be carried over, rolled over, are anticipated to be spent. But we'll be monitoring, and whatever is not, we will definitely apply it to the downtown parks. We do have some invoices that have already come, and they're currently in the general fund, but we can always move it back. As for the interest earnings, there is no deadline and there is no restriction on how those funds could be used. So at the end of 2026, actually prior to 2026, during the year-end budget adjustment, I will be bringing back a number to the City Council to close out the project. So we'll make an estimate on what is to be remaining in terms of interest earnings, close out the fund, ARPA fund, and move it over to the general fund. We will still ask the City Council your direction on how those dollars should be spent, and if it's still to be spent on downtown and Edgewater parks, we will do that. But that'll occur during the year-end budget adjustment.
Okay, so let's just, so we're all on the same page. The ARPA regulations that came out from Treasury allowed anybody, any entity, even if you got less than $10 million, to take 10 million to the general fund. We haven't taken much that even, and then all the interest money can go into the general fund also. Is that correct?
Yes.
So we're really under no danger of having to send money back to the Treasury, because at the end of 2026, if we have any money left, and I don't know that we will, if we have any money left, we'll just move it over to the general fund.
If it's interest earnings, we have enough expenditures that if there are project savings out of the $1,079,000 at the end of 2025, we have charges that we have been incurring as it relates to the downtown parks that we could apply to the ARPA funds.
Okay. Okay.
And there's no further action that the city council needs to do with that because the council already committed those dollars.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Kraus on anything in there? We're going to do a lot of budget stuff. We're writing a budget at the end of the year, so I guess we don't have any questions. Yeah, we got to go to the carry forwards next. So Ms. Kraus, you got off easy tonight.
Okay, well,
Carry forward budget adjustment. You're still here.
I'm still here.
200 and beginning on page 232 of our packet,
Yes.
carry forward adjustments.
And this carry forward budget adjustment, you'll see that we spent a lot of money or we're requesting to spend a lot of money, but at the end of the day, there's still some money. So the 12% general fund reserves, we view that as the floor. At minimum, we need to keep that 12% reserves. And if we end up with additional funds beyond that 12%, that's a good thing. We've done that in the past where we've taken those excess dollars, and they're not really excess, their better word is unassigned dollars, to fund other programs. And in this budget adjustment, you'll see there's about $1 million in the general fund, and that is earmarked for future public defender cost increases that we're expecting to see. And that is based on the analysis that our assistant to the city manager, Michael Vargas, presented to you on a number of occasions. So on page 232, this budget adjustment is to true up what our beginning balances are for 2026 based on the 2025 year-end balances. It also incorporates items that City Council had previously approved, and so we're just capturing that here. And then appropriate projects that are funded by grants and contributions and continuation of capital projects, because capital projects are on a project-linked basis. And then there are some new requests as well. So skipping over to, on the next page, I still left in the City Council's goals and objectives and other commitments. The page 234 is the kind of the higher level of where we will be if the City Council approves this budget adjustment. And at the end of 2026, if the budget adjustments were approved, there would still be ending fund balance of about $31 million. A good portion of that is in the Surface Water Management Fund, which has $11 million. General fund is going to be roughly $7,600,000, and that is to keep the 12% reserves, plus keeping any excess or unassigned balances of about $1 million. And then the other, about $3 million is special revenue funds, so they're for specific purposes.
Ms. Kraus,
Yes,
I'm looking at page 235.
sure.
And you have the estimate for the general fund balance proposed revised for 2026. Does that include Councilmember Branstadter's Christmas and April pronouncement that we're getting the refund from the South Sound 911?
No, it does not yet.
Will that go into will that be a general fund item?
That is a general fund item. It's in the South Sound 911. That's what is going to be reimbursed, or actually, it's not really even a reimburse. When we get our assessment in August, that I will make that actually the 2026 is already done. I believe that $636,000 that is coming back to the city may be 27. I haven't seen the memo to know the details of it. But if it is something that is applied to 2026, which I kind of don't think so, it's typically planning for the next biennium, you'll see a reduced amount that will be paid to South Sound 911. And we will document that as part of the budget so that you don't see a $636,000 reduction and then next year it's more than $636,000 increase.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Continue, please.
Okay. And so while we're on page 235, you'll see at the very bottom, what I've included in this budget adjustment is the $700,000 for the 1/10 of 1%. So that tax would go in effect on July 1st, and the estimate is about $700,000. But I wanted to be very, very clear, that's what that this budget includes that. And in the top portion of the table, you'll see the excess shortfall one time. That's $999,000 that would be saved and accumulated for future public defender costs. And on page 236, just a reminder that we still have limited term positions that expire at the end of 2026, and that equates to 6.75 positions. I'm not going to cover the public defender caseload compliance because I think Michael Vargas did a good job with that. We still have on page 238 the commitment to Edgewater Park as a condition of accepting the grants that city manager previously signed off on with the approval from the city council. Just a reminder also that we have the Axon camera system in the tune of about $510,000, as well as flock safety cameras for consideration in the next budget. And we are still have collective bargaining agreements that are out there that are not incorporated in this budget. They will be incorporated once they are settled. So on the proposed budget adjustments, there's a lot of detail in here, but I think what I'll do is I'll skip over to page 263. And this is really just a summary of the proposed adjustments. I'm happy to cover any areas that you would like me to get more details on, but I think what I would do is focus on the ones that are identified as new. There is an $85,000 request for the public defender primary contract. I think in the item that came to City Council this evening was $86,000. We have included Friendship and Sister City Relations funds of $50,000, the City Council Retreat Facilitator of $8,133, an operational analysis of $125,000. And we have a new grant, but it's offsets each other, so I'm not going to spend much time there. Our citywide replacement reserves impact to the general fund. This is for the accumulation of reserves to vehicles, increased about $108,000. We are recognizing Pierce County is currently leasing a boom truck from the city, and we're just recognizing the revenues that come to the Fleet and Equipment Fund, which means a reduction in the M&O cost to the operating departments. I am adding in here an increase, a request for increase in the fleet maintenance and operations cost. Just overall, costs are higher when it comes to parts as well as the labor portion of it. But then we also are experiencing some older vehicles, so more cost for that. We have a number of items related to the facility here at City Hall. That includes the garage door that just gave out probably about a month ago or so. And so the estimate to repair that is $65,000, repair or replace it, whichever way. We have also additional costs for the fire alarm panel at City Hall of $14,000. Municipal Court needs a portion of the roof repaired or replaced, and that estimate is $150,000. And also, we have additional police station HVAC system controls of $35,000. I put police generator controls as a new item. It's actually not a new item, so I'll correct that. And then the sound transit station has some elevator maintenance that needs to happen to be in compliance, and that's $45,000. On the information technology side, we are needing to add back our current financial system. So we couldn't just cut off our current financial system while we're implementing the new. Once we implement the new, we will not be paying the maintenance fee on the old system, as we'll just be setting it up on a different server and not have any maintenance on it. I think you talked about this some during the council retreat, but there is a $10,000 for the audio visual maintenance. This is actually bringing in the consultant that we used to set up this system. And so every time they come, there's a cost to do that. And this gives us the ability to cover those costs. But we also recognize that there is some additional equipment upgrades that needs to happen. We don't have an itemized list right now. We're still evaluating, but the hope is that the city council will add some funds to this so that we are able to replace if that need comes up. The microphones that was set up in Saturday's retreat, those were just temporary. I mean, they're ours, but it's not a perfect solution or yet to be determined. We're also requesting to put in here really as a kind of earmarking the funds, just funds to look at the overall audio visual system in City Hall. So we have the council chambers, but we also have some conference rooms too, where meetings or public meetings are being held. We don't have an idea of what needs to occur. What we will do is bring all parties involved and have a very transparent process in terms of what are the needs, what are we looking at, so that when we bring in vendors, we'll know exactly what it is that we're hoping to have. And maybe they'll share more information, but we need to start with the base. And then you heard about website accessibility. And the good news, so April 24th is just next week. And what they have done is extended it by 1 year. But that doesn't stop the city from moving forward. If the city council approves this funds, we do need to have it done for ADA compliance reasons. So that's about, I think the number is actually a little bit higher with the signed contract, but I don't think it's enough where we'll have to change it, but I'll take a closer look. And then we also have some funds that we're requesting for safety supplies, and these are those little, you know, those red, white boxes for Band-Aids and such. Those have been coming for the past couple of years, consistently higher. We've shuffled some dollars around, but the 1,870 is what is needed. And that's really what covers the general and street fund. And then the rest of them are, a lot of them are housekeeping in nature. So as I mentioned, the $20 vehicle licensing fee, reducing the estimates and also reducing the amount of the debt service payments to reflect with the latest bond issue. We're just realigning the hotel motel lodging tax with what the city council approved back in November of last year. We're carrying over balances from the property abatement fund, which includes the abatement program, rental housing safety, and the 1406 affordable housing. These all come in one fund, but we treat them as 3 separate funds and are keeping their balances separate. The funding for the public arts, we've traditionally had just earmarked any balances. So this is the funds that go into the public art is coming from the McGavick Center from the days that the city rents out. And any balances left, $2,000 annually goes to the Arts Commission, and the remaining is set aside for a major art project. And for this biennium, we did put some funding in for major art projects, but this is going to be in addition to that. In the next funds is our narcotics, our seizure funds, and we have 3 of them: narcotics, felony, and the federal. These are restricted. There's specific purposes for which they can be used. So those are set aside as a special revenue funds, and we're just carrying the balances to be spent for things that actually qualify for those types of expenditures. CDBG is also a restricted fund, can only be used for certain things, so we've carried that over. Neighborhood Stabilization 3 is a grant and for a very specific purpose. I don't know if I need to go through the rest of these because they're very specific, like SSMCP can only be used for SSMCP. Public safety grants, its net effect is 0. The ARPA funds, which we just covered, the debt service we just covered, and then the other ones are a continuation of capital projects. But I do want to highlight that for the Westlake Ave street projects, there is a request for 240,000. And this is still an estimate, you know, as they're refining the first set of information, but there could be savings there. I mean, it's kind of a better estimate than the 500,000 that was thrown out as a placeholder. So.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kraus. Any questions for Ms. Kraus?
Thank you for that. That's really, really helpful. Did I hear that we're paying $10,000 for an AV consultant? Does that purchase any equipment, or is that just someone helping us understand what we might want to buy or implement?
I'm sorry, what was that for?
If I heard correctly, there was a $10,000 line item for paying an AV consultant, an audio video consultant. Is that right?
It's not actually an audio visual consultant. It's the vendor that came in and set up the audio visual that we have. The vendor is actually JMark, and there's not many vendors that do this type of work, but typically when there is an issue, they will come in and they will test the different systems. They will work with staff. But that's what we're paying them, is for services, not a consultant. I shouldn't have used the term consultant.
Is it an annual service that they provide, or how often are they coming in?
It's an as-needed basis. So when they come in, they'll charge us for their service.
And how much is that service per visit?
It really depends on how long they're here, what they're trying to troubleshoot.
Okay, so we're just
I can get-
establishing a bucket of $10,000 to apply toward that as needed.
Yes.
Okay,
I'm
thank you.
happy to come with additional information as we get into the public.
No, that's fine. That's helpful.
Okay.
Thanks.
Councilmember Talbot.
Thank you, Ms. Kraus. So you mentioned, I thought I heard you mention that there was about $300,000 or so that we that was maybe unexpected, or an uptick in used to pay the cash out of sick and PTO for retirees. And perhaps maybe this is a comment or a question for budget timing, but I guess, do we currently have fiscal policies that either put limits on the amount of sick or PTO that that employees can carry over on a year, or put some sort of caps so as to take preventative or proactive measures to avoid these high spikes for retirees, especially if we know that there is going to be a year with more or planned retirements?
Unfortunately, no. And because they are driven by the collective bargaining agreements. So the non-represented groups, so a lot of our employees, the ones that you're seeing, those are coming a lot from our police department, as I mentioned, and a lot of them are in the police guild. So all of that is driven by what they negotiated, not much that we can do. And once you put it in negotiations, it's going to be very hard to bring it back down. So.
Understood. And so we haven't signed that, we haven't renewed that union.
It's in negotiations
Union
currently.
contracts at all, right?
Yeah, it's under negotiations.
Excuse me. And then, yeah, I guess just my final comment along those lines is at the beginning of the packet, noting the 6 FTEs that are at risk for expiration at the end of the year. It's really hard for me to swallow that, you know, we are affected by the ability to retain or even recruit permanent or other FTEs in general, because we are straddled with accommodating budget for employees that have plans to retire and, you know, are hanging on and bulking up on that type of their leave balances, which then affect the budget cumulatively in one sense. So That's just a comment. Thank you.
Councilmember Laura Sella.
Thank you, Mayor Boki. And thank you, Ta. This is another great in-depth coverage of all the funds. I'm going to go back to something that Councilmember Lindholm started with, and that is in the IT budget, we've got 3 line items for council chambers, audio, video equipment. First one is maintenance, the second one is upgrades, and the third one's a replacement. I want to make sure we're not planning to upgrade something and then replace it 2 months later, right? So how do we differentiate between those 3 categories?
So first of all, our immediate need is to have the equipment running so that the city council could have a council meeting in the manner in which it needs to be. So that would be our first. And a good example of that would have been those microphones. Taking a look at upgrades, if I'm just going to make this up, if that fails, that screen fails, we would want to be able to replace that. Our idea is not to upgrade something and then immediately look at revamping the whole system. And what you're going to see when we get into the 27-28 budget, which is, we're starting that like in June, is a strategic plan that is actually more strategic rather than, oh, we need to upgrade some servers. We're going to be thinking more strategically, taking a look at the number of servers we have, and are those servers needed? Taking a look at consistencies overall, you know, like how are we issuing laptops or computers and devices, just even our general devices. I remember when I first got here and I was surprised that there was a personal printer in my office. Granted that I was on crutches and all, I still couldn't understand. So really is taking a look at really efficiencies and cutting down costs where we can. And this is something, since I've been here, I've had IT under me, and that is something that we've consistently done. Now, on the other end of it, if you go too cheap and go for all the freebies, there can be some detriment to that. So it's really taking a look at the city holistically and making sure that operations are occurring kind of across the board in the same manner, taking a look at new requests. And so really trying to do away with, oh, you know, oh, this came up and so our department needs it. No, it's this came up, how is it going to affect all of the different departments? And I use that as an example because even when we're looking at replacing the council chambers, it is not going to be like, well, I need this because I have this meeting. Okay, let's just sit down, let's evaluate, let's take a look, how are departments using it overall? And yeah, it will not be 2 months late. I can guarantee you that. You know, I wouldn't do it personally for my own finances. If I know I'm going to get a new couch, I wouldn't be recovering my couch and then 2 months later to get a new couch. So yeah.
I appreciate that, and having a robust IT strategy is important as we look at all the assets. And
yeah, you're going to see something different than you have ever seen in any of the budget documents. And I think when we first labeled it as an IT strategic plan, it really wasn't a strategic plan. It was just more of a 6-year plan on some things that we were going to be doing, but it really was no different than, oh, we have a one-time request. So we're going to put it into a package that talks about the strategy, where we are now, where we plan to be.
just one other question. So you mentioned for the Westlake Lakefront Street End project, last year we had forecast that it would be 500 grand, right? And I think it was mostly ARPA funds, and I think there was some other grant fund that made that up. Now we're looking at 740,000, so we're 50% higher than we initially anticipated.
Yeah.
Are we keeping a close enough eye on that so that we don't continue to grow, and also recognizing lessons learned for our future street end projects so that they're not potentially off?
I think here's what happened is we had a pot of money and it was ARPA funds. How are you going to allocate those ARPA funds? And so there was a desire to do some street ends, and the amount of money that was available came out to be $500,000. It was probably prioritized amongst the $13.67 million. There was no work that was done in getting that $500,000. And over the summer, even before our city manager arrived, there was discussion about, hey, how can we get some street ends, just because there was some volunteer groups. And so there was an interest in doing that. But I believe, I don't recall any discussion that there was any, engineers' estimates or any consideration other than let's identify some of this. And that's how the $500,000 came up. I don't remember any mathematics or any of that.
Gotcha. So essentially it was a placeholder.
Yes.
Until we had better data. I'd be curious to see if our other projects on the same topic are also placeholders or if we have better data on them.
Yeah, and we're actually pretty much done with the ARPA dollars. And I'm trying to think if I did anything else. The only other one that I could think of is the Camp Murray Master Plan, but I don't think there's any increase in that. I know that our new Parks Director is very conscientious about the cost, and her and I just had some conversations about, I don't know, but we'll be watching it. So.
Thank you. Yeah, it's the best we can do to right size the costs to what we need, sort of a minimum viable product. Let's stick with that. So, thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions for Ms. Kraus? Ryan, Councilmember Pearson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to kind of add on to Preston's comments about Westlake, I mean, it's a bit concerning that the total cost of a single street end is already at $740,000, and we haven't done any litigation. We haven't done, this is an estimate at this point, and we all know how these things work. We got an estimate for the H barn, and now it's doubled what the estimate was. So I have some real concerns about how much we're going to be putting forth and impacting the general fund with these street ends. I would be a huge advocate for having these things volunteer ran and not putting a ton of effort into them. If that's the way if our lessons learned are that it's going to cost us a bunch and we're going to be in litigation for these other ones that are more complex and they have, encroachments and all these things. I have real concerns about that because the access is there. People can hack down some bushes if we give them some permits that we're going to be doing to get access, but it's not access for a ton of people. It's a handful of folks that are using these versus us putting forth $1 million or $2 million for a major park improvement that thousands and thousands of people would be using on a weekly and monthly basis. So fundamentally just have some concerns with as we kind of move through Westlake and see where these things go. So thank you.
I think the one thing that I will say that if we are going to do a street end, and for this particular one, it has to do with the slopes and shoreline requirements. I think we do need to be mindful of our liability as well. So.
Any more questions for Ms. Kraus? Well, thank you very much, Ms. Kraus. We appreciate all that information, and it gives us something to work with going forward. And thank you to you and your team for all that.
Thank you.
Good job. Mayor Russell, or Mayor, please go on. City Manager, Mayor Russell. Reports by the City Manager.
Congratulations on your promotion.
Mr. Russell.
That threw me off there for a bit there. The first thing I need to say is, as much as I appreciate our city attorney jumping on the sword for 2 continuances, as you'll see on those memos, my name's on there as coming through. So take accountability for that. Coincidentally, I can't remember the last time we've had a continuance based on the materials in the agenda in my career. So to have 2 of them in one night is like a personal record. Not proud of it. But I do appreciate the council taking the step to continue them. It's really easy to try and just keep moving forward, but that's usually when problems arise. So if there's a matter of confusion, like we were experiencing, especially with the red line stuff. Thank you for making the right decision to continue it. So we had the right information come back to act on. That's just much more challenging if we have to come back with a correction for something that we did before. So as much as it's a humbling component right now, I really appreciate that that's the action council took. Chief Smith did leave some year-end reports on the counter here. That was the last component. I just didn't want to disrupt our flow anymore and pass those out. So they're there on the table. Looking forward on a few items coming up. We did have the Whispers of Korean art display from 5 to 7 today, which was great. Coming up tomorrow, ECU ribbon cutting, 3 o'clock. Fort Silicon Neighborhood Association meeting, Downtown Neighborhood Association meeting on Wednesday, Master Builders Association on Thursday, and then Parks Appreciation Day and the Woods Lake grand opening on Saturday. So gets us through basically the end of the week there. And I looked ahead and didn't look like there was much in that next week. So those are the items upcoming. And that's all.
Thank you very much, Mr. City Manager. Council member comments. So who should we start with tonight? Oh, do you have any questions for the city manager? Apparently, council member Pearson does.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we had some comments tonight and some information presented about American Lake and what we're doing there or not doing there and stuff. So I want to, they've got a ton of support. It sounds like they've activated a bunch of folks that want to do something. And I understand that there's only one permit that can be had and we have it. And so I really want to make sure that we're putting forth a good effort to work with them to get whatever they need done. It sounds like there's, I don't know, I guess what it sounds like, but they've identified some issues and it's up to us to work with them to allow them to collect more money from their own folks that live on the shoreline. Or I don't really know all the details, but I'd like to get more of a understanding on that and figure out that sooner rather than later, I guess.
Yeah, just briefly. So the American Lake District is ultimately where those things need to belong to change the assessment component. One of the things they're asking is to jump on our current permit. There's some challenges with that based on liabilities and procurement and how the city does it because they want their own contractor on our permit. And we typically wouldn't co-join those types of things. I think the best thing though is we'll get a document out to council kind of explaining what the process is and what it's gone through. Remember they're talking about sense of urgency, but that's been a known component. And we've been talking about the American.
No, I
Lake
understand it's been going on for 10 years, but at some point in time, you know, it'd be nice to be able to.
Yeah, the ultimate answer though, along with, and what state law provides is the Lake Management District in terms of the assessment and the dollars, and it has to come through, the district establishes a work plan, the assessment rules. That ultimately is the long range.
And do we manage that for Lake Steilacoom?
That I believe came through a court order, which I believe American Lake homeowners can go that route as well. They'd have to petition county court or superior court to get that same process, but that's available to them as well.
Or we can give our permit to them. I mean, we can force them to take it, I guess, through a court order, or we can somehow work with them to.
There's multiple variables there.
Yeah, okay.
You got the one is they've asked to have this, manage their own lake. Well, that's what Lake Steilacoom did through a court order.
Okay.
And they can initiate that process if they really want to go that route and manage it themselves and go through that process that's identified in state law. The other thing is we have a permit through the work plan of the Lake Management District. The treatment they're planning is not on that permit. And
I
it's not a-
understand, yeah, so can we amend that with their recommendation and getting, that's where I guess.
But one of the
get more
challenges
information.
is the liability component. We go through a procurement that brings it in. They don't want to go through any of that, from my understanding. So you're not going to have, the liability is going to be all on the city for a contractor that hasn't gone through our procurement program. So again, I think the best thing to do is draft up some information for council so you can see what we're looking at and the challenges that are there.
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
Thank you, Mayor Boki. I'm going to follow up on Councilmember Pearson's request. As far as what goes into that packet, I'd like to understand where the city's responsibility lies on this and how that's different for the different lakes in the city. And then, as Councilmember Pearson said, can we get away from that responsibility as just another property owner that has that lakefront, treated just like any other folks on the lake?
Yeah, I think they have to come up with the money if they want more services. And that's one of the, but they have to do it as the Lake Management District. They have to do it all together. So what we're hearing is from one group of people who want something, but the vehicle is the Lake Management District that has to vote on the dues and that kind of thing. Is that correct? Or can,
Essentially, that's how it's laid out. But again, we want to answer some of the questions and what some of the challenges are with, the request as it relates to procurement and liability, the permit component, and just kind of have time to go through all those, which I know legal and engineering is already working on some of that stuff. So it'll be easy to get that information when it's assembled.
Yeah, I want to understand why we're in the lake management business instead of the local government business.
right. Well, we don't want to be in the lake management business. That's why,
Yeah. I think
that's why we have all these.
And that's why we have a lake management district.
Right.
Right.
That's a committee, but it's all, we do grant forum as part of that for the milfoil treatment. So yeah, there is a little bit of our own involvement in there. But that is a tool and a mechanism through state law that's available.
Yeah, I just question whether we want to continue doing that.
Councilmember Talbot, these are questions for the city manager.
Right, and along those lines, it's my understanding that there is a large sense of dissatisfaction with the Lake Management District. And I would just like to understand that when you bring your information to us, can you help us understand what our role is, if any, in liaisoning with either at a staff level or not, with that Lake Management District to help, I think, bridge some communication that maybe is falling through some major cracks between what's understood by the homeowners that want something and what the capacity and what the lake management can do and what the process and the steps are for them to do the things that the lake owners are asking for. It sounds like whatever the process is, there's some gaps in communication in the groups, and that's my understanding. And I think that those homeowners are looking to the city to help because they are our residents, and so they're looking to us for some leadership. But I want to understand what our role is because I also understand that we have a limited role of sorts. So just a comment for that future presentation.
Well, yeah, we can get that information in there. I can go, long story short, the council does approve the work plan for the Lake Management District.
Okay, any other questions for the city manager? Yeah, we're just gonna have to get this resolved at some point, but it seems like the vehicle is the Lake Management District and the amount of dues they're paying. If they pay enough, they can get as much treatment as they would like. And we'd have to get in the work plan, but adding it to the work plan, but not having funding doesn't accomplish anything, right?
Well, now I'm stepping above my skis, but you could be in the work plan to set that up as the assessment role if, council so desires to provide guidance to the Lake Management District to investigate the addition.
We're making the assumption, I mean, when people show up here, there's an assumption that that if they had a vote on higher dues, that it would pass. And I think it was mentioned at a previous meeting, if they saw what the people in Lake Stilichom are paying, they might not agree to that, right? So there's more to the story, I think. But anyway, hopefully we can get this resolved. I'm sorry it's using so much staff time. Okay, council member comments. Let's start with the council member Laura Sella tonight.
Thank you, Mayor Boki. Start out, I appreciated the retreat we had on Saturday. Getting used to seeing you guys almost every day. Nice. It's unfortunate that we had to miss the youth summit because they were scheduled at the same time. So I think we've all said before, in the future, try and balance those so we can attend both. At the end of the retreat, I mentioned we may have a need or a desire, or I have a desire to do something similar on a quarterly basis. Maybe it's a fourth Monday, 4 times a year, where we're able to kind of sit and break bread and just talk about the stuff that's important to us, like we did at the retreat. And I think that helps us stay on track. So I'm curious to see the feedback from other members of council. I know we used to meet 4 times a month. We dialed it back to 3, but our agendas have looked pretty full and some things are getting pushed out farther than we may want. So that might be a way to address that as well. Looking forward to this week. On Wednesday, I'll be attending an Earth Day presentation that they're going to go over the state comprehensive climate action plan. I'm excited to hear about that. That's at the Environmental Services Building. I will be at the Downtown Neighborhood Association meeting here on Wednesday evening. Looking forward to Parks Appreciation Day. And last year I went to Springbrook Park and there was a good crowd there doing some important work, including our county council member. And then Wards Lake Park ribbon cutting is going to be exciting. Next week, I will be attending the Pierce County Opioid Abatement Council meeting. It's our annual one on Thursday. And then some other comments. So I appreciated the police department quarterly update. I wonder if there would be a value to getting a similar update from our courts folks about the caseloads they're seeing, what the trends are, and how we can have an understanding of that. I recognize that, you know, we're the executive branch, they're the judicial branch, you guys are the legislative branch, I guess, or maybe that's maybe you're executive or legislative. I don't know. I got to watch Schoolhouse Rock again. But I think it might be valuable for us to see that.
Okay, I'm going to ask, does council want us to set that up? The presentation, of course, I know they've done it before.
Yeah, I don't know how long it's been or what type. So first look at, do we have them planned anyway? Do we bring them in on a regular basis anyway?
Okay.
We haven't heard from them for a while. I mean, I think the judge was here.
I think is in between June of last year and August.
Okay.
I think is in that period. I'm not positive, but I think it was before I started.
Oh,
after I
okay.
was-
So it's been a while. So we're coming up on a year probably.
It's a hot topic right now, right? So I think it's relevant.
Yeah, set something up for June or something.
All right, and then a couple more items from public comments, just things that were brought up. So I mentioned to Ta the motion sensing streetlights, and she said she'd get back to us with that. We talked about the city's responsibility for American Lake management. And then I really kicked a hornet's nest with this Gravely Lake stuff. And I'm excited that we got people to turn out and talk about what's important to them. So Gravely Lake, Lake Stilichom, American Lake, Lake Louise, they all belong to the people of the state of Washington, right? Not just the residents of Lakewood, not just the people who live on the lakes, but to everyone in the state. And so as a community, we owe it to folks to allow them to use our property on those lakes to be able to get to it. Per the 2023 study, Hilltop Lane is not feasible to develop, which I understand it's super skinny, super steep, doesn't make sense. But per that same study, Linwood Lane on Gravely Lake is a better candidate, and they had sketches of what that could look like. And barring those, as I brought up at the retreat, we can look at other available properties that may be a better option. Whether they are affordable for us at the time, we can make those decisions as they come forward, but I will continue to keep an eye out for those opportunities as they come up. So I appreciate homeowners around the lake stocking it with fish, stocking a state lake with fish. That's very nice of them, but it doesn't give them exclusive rights to harvest those fish. So I appreciate everything they said and look forward to continued discussions as we provide opportunities to all the residents of Lakewood and folks in the state that own these lakes. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Pearson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One of the other public comments had to do with parking issues in Tillicum and folks on the sidewalks. And so I think we've heard that come up a few times. And so if nothing else, I guess if we could get some sort of enforcement or someone to go, try to get some folks that are not parking on the sidewalk or out in the road, illegally parked out in the right of way, at least give them a heads up that they can't park there and get them moved along. So the Gravelly Lake folks that came out, I appreciated the various comments kind of highlighting some concerns. I think one of the concerns that was raised at the council retreat was about the public safety and access to the lake. And so it sounds like fire has some sort of definitive agreement. It'd be nice to get an update from our police department if we have some sort of agreements with some folks. It sounds like there was a number of five kind of shared boat launches or whatever around the lake, and that people have through their community, the rights to do that. So that would satisfy my interest in that. As it relates to street ends, I'm concerned about the costs on Westlake Park. We had 500,000 in ARPA contributed to that, and outside of ARPA funds, anything more than a volunteer program to me is like too much money to be spending on street ends for what we're getting for the community. So I'd be very cautious about acquiring one of these multi-million-dollar properties to improve a street end or something. So just my comments on that. Let's see here. Later this week, I am going to be going to the Master Builders Association Housing Summit on Thursday morning, and I regrettably will not be able to attend any of the festivities this weekend. I'll be gone. So.
Councilmember Lindholm.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I share fellow council members' urgency and concern around American Lake. This is something I've heard about since I came on council all of 4 months ago. But there's some real, if there's confusion on council about what the process is, we can expect that there's confusion in the community. So I think it's important that we get the information that city manager has kindly offered to provide, but also that we communicate that information to the community. And we maybe together in a collaborative way establish a way forward that feels good and makes sense and all the things. One way or another, they certainly want and deserve a certain amount of say and maybe even ownership in the process. So that's a good thing. I really appreciate Councilmember Laura Sello's idea about the motion lights. It's a great question. And we heard some concern in public comment tonight about light pollution. I don't want to turn off the lights in Lakewood. I'm concerned about the safety concerns I would bring, but I think that's a really thoughtful thing to explore. So thanks for bringing that up. I share Councilmember Pearson's concern about let's watch our dollars as we explore not just street ends, but everything. I think we're entering a time where that's going to be more and more important. And I too am going to try to attend the MBA summit on Thursday. That's all, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Brandstetter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, to just clarify what the South Sound 911 board did in regarding the $636,000 that come here, that there were two options that were put out there that cities like Lakewood can choose. And one is to get a check. And the guidance to the South Sound 911 staff was if a community wants a check for what they're owed, do that by June 30th. The other option was cities could just have that in their account and use it against future costs or invoices that are there. And in fact, the executive director of South Sound 911 really was encouraging all of the municipalities to take the checks because that'll all get done before the next budget has to be done, and it'll be more complicated. I do plan to go to the Master Builders Housing event thing in Puyallup on Thursday morning. That regarding the folks from Gravelly Lake that came to speak, they certainly took our discussion on Saturday and extrapolated it, well, going forward. And the truth is that our comprehensive plan, as it is currently written, has a policy to investigate acquiring lands for parks. Okay, and that's all we really did on that day, is to take a look at what's there, because we're trying to see what's going on. And as we've learned from Edgewater Park, and as we've learned in a couple of other parks, when you try to add and you're trying to do things, that the master planning process gets intensive and involves community things, and going to be able to go and do that. So while I thought that they were way ahead of us and we're not looking to something to do that. And with respect to the property that we've asked the staff to just sort of take a look at what it might be, one of the uses or recreational uses of property that's near parks is view. And so a parcel that's going all that, and an unusable street end, I think perhaps changes if you also acquire a parcel adjacent to it, so that instead of 14 feet, it's 114 feet of shoreline. But I was encouraged by the fact that they all came out, because it indicated that, like on Saturday, we were sitting here in a room with about this attendance, but that people were tuned in and paid attention to what we do, either in real time or subsequently on YouTube, and that's a good sign. I think that it is. I think it means that the folks are doing that. And when we do bring up something that resonates with them, they'll marshal their forces and come and talk to us to be able to go and do that. And on American Lake, the issue is we have a permit. It said we'd have to go and get the permit amended to address the specific problems that they want. And our permit is to deal with problems that are lake-wide. And the way that we fund our activities is we have to have a vote of property owners to say that they will do that. To have someone come and say, we'll give you the money, that's not the way that a lake management program is allowed to be funded because you end up with unequal contributions to something that's there. And, the current work of the Lake Management District is done with the 60 cents per foot that is assessed to every property owner on the lake. And now to have a group of property owners that say, well, we'll give you the money, but we only want you to do our shoreline is, but you, the city, have to be the contractor, is, as the city manager indicates, creates us for liability both with a contractor, but also is that really what we're allowed to do by state law? So I look forward to getting something fairly comprehensive on both the legal side and the the ecology position on what they want to do to go on off. And then for those of you that are going to be traveling to Gimhe, I wish you a good a good trip and a good kind. The event that we had in the city hall today, the arts thing, I think was a very good event because it was not look at art on a wall. It was there were art on the wall. There were descriptions of the items on the wall from the painter that were actually insightful about what they were, but there was also music, okay, and there was dance, and it was clear that there was an intention to integrate into American society, but not lose touch with their historical society, and that's the way that they were going to go about it. So I really appreciate both the Arts Commission, but also the Korean Arts Commission that we worked with for this one to do something that was well worth attending.
Thank you. Councilmember Talbot.
Okay, I'll try to get through my just quick bullet points here. First, I wanted to acknowledge in the materials, in the written materials that we received in our packets tonight before us. I just wanted to say thank you to the management at the Village Green Mobile Home Park for opening your guest parking to the public for the Wards Lake event this weekend. I'm really appreciative of that and their willingness and openness to work with the city. So just wanted to acknowledge their generosity. Planning Commission met last week and they have made some progress on helping us assign their Planning Commission volunteers to each of the 4 task forces that we've talked about in the creation of this NEC program to help our obligation to complete our climate action plan. So they happily kind of stepped up. And so I'm just really thankful and appreciative to them. I want to acknowledge that their time for that. And it really amounts to 1 extra meeting for them for simply 2 months, but their regular schedule is generally unaffected. One of the other topics that came up at that meeting is that the Best Western property and owner at the Colonial Center has applied for historic preservation designation status. And so they are applying to be a heritage landmark because the age of the business and the structure and the building generally meets the criteria to be considered eligible to apply because it's over 50 years old. The hotel was built in 1965 and their case to be considered is that their architecture fits with the colonial, even though it is mid-modern, but a colonial representation in a mid-modern interpretation of style. So that will be, so there was some discussion among planning commission members and questions. Generally, so the director of public works is the designated historic preservation officer that would make the determination. And the planning commission will be holding a public hearing on May 6th for that application status, but then it would proceed through the Department of Public Works for ultimate approval and certification. That's that for Planning Commission. Touching on Councilmember Lauricella's comments about potentially meeting on the fourth Mondays, I do understand and I do acknowledge that it is nice to have some additional time when we need it to, I suppose, get grouped together a little bit more informally, but still discuss business. But also at the same time, I do feel like sometimes it can feel loaded, excuse me, that we have a lot of, we can take on a lot of, or we'll have a lot of thicker agendas presented in study session. And so it's harder to get through those. So I would only say that I would be open to potentially a fourth meeting during the months where we have 5 Mondays. So there's only a few months in the year that have 5 Mondays. And at least in 2026, I think those months are June, August, and November. I don't know how easy it will be to gather people in November during the holidays, but perhaps if there's feeling or consensus around those other 2 months, I wouldn't object to that. I also wanted to touch on my fellow council members' comments about the lakes. Thank you for all of your concerns and all your sentiments expressed. I think I'm happy and I'm grateful to see all of us getting these different thoughts out. I do distinguish the matter of access and the preservation and the process for considering access very different, a separate conversation from the cost of developing and building out these street lake ends. And I can understand and agree. I think it's a legit concern and sentiment, the cost of adding these, of the cost of developing these street ends. I think that I didn't get a chance to say at the retreat that, yeah, I do think that developing one every biennium is an ambitious plan. So if there is a thought to be more strategic in lake ends that serve a specific need for access, then the cost of the way that we incorporate those in our park CIP should be incorporated very thoughtfully and strategically. But the process that we move forward in dealing with the impediments, impertinences, encroachments, and other legalities of the street ends is a separate thing. So finally, it is my intent to be at the Master Builders Association event on Thursday. I did RSVP, and now some events have come up in my day job, so I am tentative. And I will be at Fort Steilacoom Neighborhood Association tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Bell.
Thank you, Mayor. No need for me to reiterate everybody's points again. You all made wonderful points, great presentations. I appreciate it all. My quick comment is I was going around the new opening at Nyanza. I guess it was Saturday. It was after our retreat, so everything was very fresh. I saw a family out there riding their bikes, other people walking their dogs. There was probably like, I want to say 6 to 7 people, and this was about 7 o'clock at night. It was gorgeous. It was great to see, and they all looked happy. And I was very happy to see a project that I had a little bit of say in. I guess I went it 5 years ago, so it just came in. Things were already in motion, but it was nice to see something come to fruition. I talked about it to Mayor Boki that it's really nice to see something happen because we work on really long projects. So that was my little fun part.
Thank you. So I just have a couple items. First, I appreciate Councilmember Laura Selly getting all his neighbors out here tonight and really helping us. I would say no matter how the feelings are, I will just tell you, I hadn't over our time on the Lakewood City Council, probably the only parks expansion that didn't get vicious opposition was in the Springbrook neighborhood, where they actually wanted a park. People thought they would use it. Charles Ames is telling me tonight how great it is. And even then, we had to fight with one of the landowners to get rid of him before he wanted to stay there, I don't know, in perpetuity. So I'm sure there were people who thought Central Park in New York was a bad idea, that it would be much better to, cover it with buildings and houses. When we talked about Chambers Bay, there was serious discussion. There were people who seriously said, hey, we should sell it for houses. Okay, I mean, they could have done that. Now, forgetting that it's next door to a sewer plant, but there are people who seriously believe that, serious people, and it wasn't, they were trying to convince people they should sell property. There was a state legislator years ago who wanted to use Fort Silicon Park for housing for the mentally ill because she hated Lakewood or didn't believe that it should ever be a park. You're always going to hear this, right? I mean, that doesn't mean we don't take public comment to understand it, but just the keep in mind what's going on at Edgewater is a tiny expansion of the park. It's one lot, right? Most of which we already owned, right? We own most of it already. And fixing up the rest of the park that had been neglected forever, right? Since the county opened the park, and they might have come through there and mowed it once in a while. And you would have thought, given the opposition to the park, you would have thought that we were like, I don't know, we were just committing some major crime. I think we were accused of criminal activity. In an urban area, if you want to expand a park, it's game on, right? It's just game on. People, but yet I will also say, in direct contradiction to what some of the people said, I have never seen property values go down when a park was built or improved. Never. I dare you to find it. I mean, go ahead and look, but, and maybe I'm wrong, but I don't know that there's a city or county anywhere that put in a park and the adjoining property is all of a sudden like, oh, there go the property values. Now, there's things that will destroy people's property values, but I don't think building parks is one of them. So I went on an editorial. I shouldn't have done it. It's too long. I do need you right now. Executive Mello called me the other day and said, as you know, Sound Transit has budget issues, severe budget issues, and they are seriously considering not extending the light rail to Tacoma. There's some variations of different themes. And he asked me if we would send a letter to Sound Transit dealing with this issue, that we expect that their obligations under ST3 be met, or in some combination of. You received the letter. My name's been changed, I guess, to now Don Boki. But I do want to hear from you. The executive has asked us to, and I said, well, come up with a letter something I can work with, and I'll bring it to council. And I sent that out to you guys, or the city manager sent it out on my behalf. And then I have, so I need to hear from you. Sound Transit is actually important to the city of Lakewood in several ways. They're located here. Pierce Transit, that's a local business, does all their work on the buses here. I mean, they are basically Sound Transit when it comes to the buses. We have for a long time supported the idea of various expansions of the Sounder train. So this is it's important how if we agree that we should write it. I believe we should. I think we need to play ball with folks locally. And if we want to be a regional player, I think but I'm not saying this letter will go forward. In fact, I will tell you right now, if we agree to send something, this letter will not, we'll shorten it up considerably. To make it work better, I think. I think they threw in a lot of stuff because they didn't know what we would be saying. So I think they expect that we'll edit it a bit. So at that, I'd like to hear from the members as to, are you okay with sending a letter on behalf of the city of Lakewood in support of the ST3 implementation, specifically the Sounder, anything under ST3, the Sounder expansion, Tacoma Dome Link light rail, and the DuPont Sounder extension? Councilmember I'll start with Councilmember Talbot.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is an issue. As much as Sound Transit issues and over budget, and just gets the brunt of it. Well, in many cases deservedly, but I this is an issue where I think, Mr. Mayor, I think you're right. I think we need to play ball, but play ball for Pierce County, because because Pierce County residents, whether they're Lakewood, Puyallup, Tacoma, whatnot, we all paid taxes into this transportation tax. That transportation tax is the biggest reason why our sales tax is double digits. And Pierce County for so long has, I'll say it, has gotten the shaft since ST1. And so I recognize that the city of Seattle has built a lot, and I recognize that they do have a ridership that wants that Ballard link, but I think that now is not the time to get on Sound Transit for. Now isn't the time to advocate to be a player for Pierce County, especially because this is a regional thing. So you have my support. Thank you.
Mike?
Well, Mr. Mayor, I think you should send a letter, but I don't necessarily know that it has to be the letter that is the Pierce County draft. There are 3 things in ST3 that are particularly significant to Lakewood, or the changes that are proposed impact us. The first is we've constantly had this extension of the maybe date for the Sounder to get to Tillicum. And we have been required to do certain land use actions because eventually there's going to be a sounder station in Tillicum, and it's caused us to have to do things that, because of the state legislature saying if you've got a proposed transit center, you've got to allow this, this, and that. And so I think one thing in the letter is we should say, we really need to get to a firm date for sounder expansion from Lakewood to the southern end of Lakewood and JBLM. The second thing in their budget crisis that they're proposing is there is an express bus that runs from the Lakewood Town Center to SeaTac. And they're proposing eliminating that, okay, so that that they'll, and that's really a pretty significant piece of what is primarily used by Lakewood residents, and I think that we want to keep that. And their rationale is, well, people don't need to go to the town center; they can catch a bus at the Sounder Station or 512 and take it to Federal Way, and then transfer to a light rail thing and they'll eventually get the SeaCat, which is a lot of lugging around of luggage if you're a tourist, or if you're just trying to get to work at SeaTac. You can't take a bus from Lake City or Stellicum or somewhere else to the Sounder Station. So you got to find another way to get to the Sounder Station, whereas right now you might be able to in a bus from your house to the town center and then goes. So I think that is an area for us to look to mention. The extension of light rail to Tacoma, essentially to Tacoma Dome Station, which was sort of the plan. I think that becomes the most visible Pierce County slight if that plan is abandoned or is pushed off 20 plus years. Isn't a way to do it. And then the last thing is, even though we send a letter with a tone of saying, don't do this, don't do that, I think your letter should include, thank you for sustaining the Lakewood Station access, non-motorized and motorized transportation improvements that we're currently partnered with, and that we're glad that we haven't heard of those being on their proposed chopping block.
Thank you. Philip?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to make sure we're a good partner to the executive. I do not claim to be an expert in sound transit in the way that some of my fellow council members are. And it's hard to approve a letter when I don't know what it says, but I would be very interested to learn more and to see what the draft is.
Preston?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with what fellow council members have said, and as I understand it, and I may be misinformed, but ST3, the monies that it raises in Pierce County have to be spent in Pierce County. That's what I was told by our previous city manager.
There supposedly is a regional equity, but it's loosely defined.
The issue is Sound Transit has divided itself into zones. And so it isn't, Pierce County isn't a zone, that the south zone is actually like Federal Way down through Pierce County to be able to go and do that. And so they look at saying that that's where they are, and and so they're talking about expanding. We already got it to Federal Way, and so it wasn't Pierce County, but there is a south zone and there's a west zone that goes out towards Bellevue and that, and then there's a north zone that runs from the top end of King County up to
Snohomish
into
County,
the
probably.
Snohomish thing, and there's even a zone that covers Bremerton, but
Okay, yeah, that helps. Yeah, when it was explained to me earlier, that was part of the reasoning for Sound Transit helping with all of our improvements on the east side of Lakewood. It wasn't just out of the kindness of their hearts, which we appreciate, but it was because they needed to expend some funds in our area. With that said, I wouldn't want to compromise that work that's being done to do this other stuff, but this other stuff is also really important. I took the light rail from Federal Way to go to the Seahawks parade, and it was a great experience, right? They said, 1 million people, but we got in and out of there easily without any challenges. If that could come down to the Tacoma Dome station, that would be wonderful. Additionally, our folks in Tillicum could really use a sounder station, right? That would help connect them to the rest of Lakewood and to the rest of the Puget Sound region. So I would hope that they're not going to cut that possibility as well as the terminal station down in DuPont. So I support the letter, but I agree with Councilmember Brandstetter that maybe it needs to be customized for our specific needs.
And I would wholeheartedly echo Mr. Brandstetter's comments and totally so. Definitely on board with all of the points that he mentioned about Tillicum, the bus route here from the town center up to the airport, and then yeah.
Thank you. And thank you, Mayor. From the beginning, you said that you were going to look at the letter and edit it and make sure that it was very tailored to Lakewood. So I appreciate my fellow council members bringing up those points. So I support you and I agree with you and I agree with my fellow council members. It's a little hard, but in an effort to move forward and keep our partnerships going, I think that we should go with the letter.
Great. Thank you very much for all your comments. I was just looking at what ST3 was about, and in the commuter rail, it was ST3 would extend Sounder commuter rail service to Tillicum and DuPont from the Lakewood station in 2036 in additional capacity improvements. So and I do want to put into the letter that I appreciate their presence here. They're a good employer and they're a major part of what Pierce Transit does. So I mean, there are people making their living from Sound Transit in our community from Sound Transit work. So, but it is about what was said, elections mean things, right? What is said during elections mean things. So I will tailor it as best I can. I'll run it by the applicable folks, and it'll be much shorter, right? I think it'll be well, I'll work on it a little bit, and I'll ask for some help also. So I appreciate that very much. So with that, we are adjourned until May 4th, 5th, whatever date that is, May 4th. Saturday Awards Lake Park, noon, right? Okay. And where can we park? Where did you say we can park? Okay, thanks.